Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey.
It is still morning, right?
Technically it's afternoon, but
Dang it.
Who's counting?
These time zones, we'll never get them right.
Yeah, time, what is it?
Autobots, Decepticons, transform and rise up!
Mike! So many Mike! So many Mike! So many Mike! So many Mike!
Well, hey there, friends. Welcome back for yet another episode of Two Mikes, Two Furious Animated Transformers, where we are continuing our further deep dive beyond the 42 episodes of Transformers Animated, discussing ancillary media and telling stories. And I'm really enjoying this extension of the discussion beyond the episode discussions. And I don't know about you, Michael Andrews, I'll bring you in a quick second, but like I like that we could just kind of talk about the show kind of like as a whole in retrospect, and we don't have to worry about being careful around our first timer. My name is Mike Seibert. I was your first timer, and I saw Transformers Animated for the first time before for doing this project. But now I'm a first timer no more. Now I'm just like the rest of you. Just a super fan for life. It's great.
A two-timer.
Yes,
maybe is that the word? A two-timer?
True. Well, and the amount of times that I've revisited episodes, I'm almost a serial rewatcher at this point. I don't quite have the XP of Michael Andrews, but very close. But speaking of the second of the two Mikes. Check it out now. He's the Spark Soul brother. He's the pizza papa who always gets paid, the warrior of the wasteland of Bohemian Tragedy himself. It is my friend, author Michael Andrews.
Hey, thank you, Mike. Here we are on the show that never ends, right? We're Energizer Bunny here. We keep on going.
Well, there's so much taffy there. So much taffy to stretch. There's so much meat on the bone. To mix my candy and meats metaphors.
Right. Well, like you were saying, it almost feels like we're more free now to talk about it than we ever have been. The show's done. We've seen it all. We've seen how it ends, and the ending came and went, and it was like, well, now we can say so much more. The shackles have been lifted.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But we are not fumbling around in the dark by ourselves. No, friends. Returning to continue to guide us on our deeper dive discussion of the production of Transformers Animated and so much more. Returning to Two Mikes, Two Furious. You might even say it's the specialist guest.
The specialist.
Story editor and co-creator of Transformers Animated, the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Marty Isenberg.
Well, hello.
Welcome back. Thank you for doing another tour with the Two Mikes.
My pleasure.
Yeah, how do you like the getting part of the name intro game and all the titles that Mike Seibert gives you on the fly? Like he's so good at that.
It's not bad for my ego. I will admit.
Perfect.
So I think today, kind of following up directly from some of our conversations last time, where, obviously we'll probably still have some questions about the production of Transformers Animated, maybe even some fan questions as well. But I think for the meat of what we were going to talk about today is some of the ancillary media, talk about some comic books, some video games, and kind of some things beyond the 42 episodes, because as you pointed out, Marty, during our last conversation, that's kind of territory we haven't quite covered yet. So I thought for today's chat, this would be a great opportunity to start digging into that. And Michael Andrews, do you want to kind of take us through where we kind of want to start?
Yeah, well, hopefully we can talk a little bit about the toy maker and the bots. I really want to talk about that. Mike Seibert's kind of more the expert because he's actually had the copy and read it. I've seen it through the recorded convention panel where they kind of read through it. And it's kind of funny because at the time, when Mike got the comic and was reading it and talking about it, he was, he kept mentioning like, it's not very spoily. There's no spoilers. I'm not spoiled. And I was like, okay, all right. And then several months later, I see the panel recorded and it's like, wow, how did this all, because it takes place throughout the entire series, correct? Mm-hmm. And I was just like, how is that not a spoiler for you? But Mike must have had his like professional podcasting blindfold and earmuffs on to get through it.
Well, I think by the point that you guys were in the series, the only thing that was a potential spoiler was the very last, the defeat of Megatron. But everything else, I think, was stuff you had already witnessed firsthand. So,
yeah,
I think you probably came in knowing that Megatron got defeated.
Even now, I'm still nervous to hear you say that. I'm like, has Mike finished it? Has he seen it all? Is he?
Well, and it's interesting because some of that bubbled up in our Endgame Part 2 conversation because I had created an entire misconception of what I thought the ending was going to be. I thought maybe like Part 1 ends with the final battle on Earth and then they take like the battle to Cybertron for Part 2. So when I saw what is now very explicitly a spoiler panel, the end of the show happens on like in the middle of the book. And I didn't really think anything of it because as you both have said, it's like, it's not that much of a spoiler that Megatron is defeated. So honestly, I didn't really think much of it. So when I'm watching the show and it actually happens, I'm like, oh no.
I was already told this.
Yeah, I was like Chekhov in Wrath of God. I'm like, Batany Bay, oh no.
We've got to get out of here now. Damn.
Hurry! What about the
Never
cardboard?
mind. Hurry!
Chekhov, what's the matter with you?
And I've talked explicitly about, seeing spoilers without context, throughout our whole episode discussion. And this was just kind of more of the same. So I don't think that it lessened the impact of the moment when it actually happened in context, in canon, in the show. But as I had mentioned previously, Marty, the part of the reason why we as a group wanted to talk about this, because like we started this project a couple years after Derek's passing. So, and I've since had conversations with folks on social media about, friends of Derek's that are, excited that there's a continuing interest in animated, and like new fans like myself are finding it and celebrating it and all that. But for me as a new fan of animated, Toymaker and the Bots hit harder than because like we've had folks on this show who had connections and friendship with Derek, but that's a long way of saying it choked me up. I rolled a tear at one point, and it was for two different reasons. One, it's so lovingly written. I mean, it's such a beautiful tribute to the beautiful person that Derek was. But there was also kind of like that bit of like, gosh, man, I wish I would have known the guy. So that's just kind of my personal baggage that I brought into it. But Marty, I would like to ask, could you start by kind of telling us how this project comes to be? I mean, obviously it's kind of under the Key and Carlisle umbrella of extended animated content, but I don't know if this is the how does Marty Isenberg get connected with Key and Carlisle to begin with story, but also just kind of like maybe talk about how the Toymaker and the Bots comes to be.
Well, I mean, the origins of it probably go back to when I did TFCon in, I want to say 2019, and I brought in a basically an archival piece, which was the original outline for what was supposed to be the season 4 opener, Trial of Megatron, which I've just kind of been hoarding in my filing cabinet, hoping that there would either be some revival of the show or maybe a comic book, either through IDW or through Hasbro. And after about a dozen years or so, nothing was happening. So I figured, okay, they had invited me to be a special guest and said, do you have any material any backstage, stuff that we've never seen before. And I said, well, I have this outline. Maybe we could do it as a reading. So that ballooned into reuniting virtually almost the entire cast to do that reading. So that sort of, I think, re-stimulated a lot of interest in animated. And Derek was still alive at the time, and I had wanted to do a lunch with Derek and with Matt, and I think Eric Siebenauer, to show them the video of that presentation, just to show, mostly to show the enthusiasm of the audience and just say, hey, they still love us. And unfortunately, that lunch never got to happen because COVID happened, and then Derek passed away. So that was sort of the long origin of kind of getting back into the I don't want to say the public eye, but maybe the fan eye of animated. And so there were a lot of requests like, would you be interested in doing a comic book for this convention or that convention? And maybe you could adapt one of the proposed season 4 episodes. And so I kept getting a lot of requests for that. And it just, to me, felt like, to do those episodes justice, I had to have Derek and Matt in the room with me. Otherwise, it would have been, it wouldn't have been completely what the show was. So I was reluctant to do anything like that. And after being in contact with Kian and hearing about the projects that he was doing, he threw out an offer and said, would you like to write something? And again, asked me, would you like to write one of these episodes? And I said, no, I don't really want to do that, but what I would like to do is this tribute to Derek that I had in mind, where it's something completely not from that season 4 proposed episodes. And it's something that I just felt like I need to get out there in the world before I can even start thinking about doing anything more with animated. So, Kian is a force of nature, and he will things into existence. And so I wrote up a comic book script and handed it over to him, and he put together his team of artists, including Eric Siebenauer, one of the original toy designers from Hasbro, who designed all of those toy versions of the Autobots and Decepticons. So they really had an authentic toy sense to them. So that team got cranking, and in a really very short amount of time, they put it together, and it was ready for just this past TFCon 25.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that came together quick, relatively. I mean, when you're talking about all the pieces that have to get moved into place for it to happen.
Well, once Kian gets involved in anything, things move very, very, very quickly, because I don't think the guy ever sleeps.
Sure seems like it, yeah. If I can ask a quick question here. So I think that's a really great plan, because it seems like that was not only did that sort of feel like a prequel to any unproduced episodes. It feels like you were kind of freed up after that. Was it also kind of a cathartic thing for you? I mean, was it something you'd kind of been ruminating on and was able to get out?
Yeah, I'd been thinking about it for a long time. I'd been thinking about doing it as a convention exclusive, and then for various reasons that didn't happen. So the story, by the time Kian approached me, the story had been mulling in my head for about a year, and I think I went as far as writing up the narration, so I would have the structure down just to remember it, when and if it ever came to life. So I already had the narration, and then it was fairly simple to just then add the images to the narration and come up with a panel count and get it in. It was, I forget how many pages it is. I think it's about 24.
Previously on 24.
But it's such a magnificent presentation. I mean, thick cardstock cover, high quality paper, top-notch coloring and art. I mean, it is It is a wonderful piece, and again, I was super grateful that I was able to grab one of the leftover copies after TFCon, and I remember that we had read your dedication, Marty, to Derek on the back of the book, and. Yeah. And again, I don't get a lot of emotions about a lot of things, but that wrecked me. That was like in a good way, heart-wrenching, that kind of thing.
Well, I'll admit, I got teary-eyed writing it. I got teary-eyed writing that particular dedication and just writing the story itself.
Yeah, I think I kind of echo Mike's sentiment from earlier. That was kind of one of the delights of doing the show with him, and I didn't really have that personal connection with Derek. I know he was very active on Twitter and answering a lot of questions, and members of the fandom felt like they were his best friend, but I never had that. So for me, it was like we'd have these people on there like, oh yeah, I talked to him this one time, and it really kind of felt like the Toymaker and the Bots doing our whole podcast, just because we were learning little stories about him and meeting him. And yeah, I think Mike, you just tweeted the other day something about like how it's one of your big regrets is that you never got to know the man in person. I think I share that sensibility.
Well, I know he loved doing the cons because he was a fan. He was a fan of the whole franchise. Yeah. So just being a part of it was very meaningful to him. And yeah, it was his baby. Those designs and most of the concepts came from him. So he felt a strong connection to it and a desire to keep it going. So with things like the Allspark Almanac, and with the the couple of convention comics and storybooks that we did, he was able to keep going.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of, just as an aside, because we're going to talk about some of the comics you wrote, Marty, but the specter of the Allspark Almanac kind of looms large over our material. Like we occasionally refer to it. It's not necessarily the source guidebook that I think Michael Andrews we might have anticipated going into the show. But it was written by Jim Sorensen and Bill Forster. I've since gotten to know Jim very well, hanging out at conventions and things like that. But so, Marty, I know you did a afterword for it, but how involved were you in that? Like, how much of that is you? How much of that is Jim? How much of that is Bill? And what's canon, I guess?
Well, yeah, what's canon is open for debate. I think what's canon is anything that was in the show and anything that Derek and Matt and I had involvement in subsequently. And in my head, that's canon. Everything else is up for debate.
Sure.
In terms of the writing, other than just looking it over, I really didn't contribute anything other than the afterword. Derek was much more directly involved because there were designs that didn't exist in the show, that models and things that he wanted to get in there. And Jim and Bill were very much a presence around the production. They, things were pretty loose at that point. I think anything subsequent to that, Hasbro wanted a much heavier hand in what got said, what was done in terms of promoting the show. So it was a point where they didn't have the same amount of control. So Jim and Bill came to us and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this?" We said, "Sure, come on in." We didn't have to get approval from any of the higher ups. We just did it. Obviously, because it was an IDW project, it had the blessing of Hasbro, and of course, several of the Hasbro people wrote forwards and afterwards and things for it. So there was if there wasn't oversight, there was certainly the blessing to do it. But I don't know of certainly no animated show where something like that exists, where such a detailed and mostly in-universe recounting of everything in the entire series. I mean, subsequently there are those DK books that sort of break down the whole universe of whatever. Right. But I don't know that anything like that existed before or since. And I think that's added a lot to the mystique in the fan community about the series, because there is so much information beyond the show itself that it does give the show a mystique. And that, coupled with the fact that we have this season 4 that never happened, that, it sparks the imagination in a lot of ways of, everybody's wondering what could have been, is there a way to get it, is, now it's like, well, which version of season 4 would you want?
Right.
Yeah.
So it allows for a tremendous amount of fan involvement that I don't think, certainly no other Transformers show has, and I really can't think of any other show that has that level of ancillary, source book, guidebook. I don't know.
Yeah.
At least not something that was not concurrent with the production itself.
Right. And kind of echoing what we were saying on the last episode, is just like so many people involved being so passionate about it, knowing the characters so well. I mean, all those descriptions are written from like a character perspective, and they're pretty well in character, to what we know from the show. It's just like someone really had to deep dive into those characters, like get in the mind of the psyche of those characters to write it.
Yeah, and that was Jim and Bill. So, we had devoted, dedicated fans while we were making the thing, at least on that level. I think it was a fandom of the franchise in general, but just having access to an actual production was a holy grail.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can bounce back quick to kind of Toymaker and the Bots a little bit, but Cosmos, was that Derek's like favorite character, or like a really high ranking character for him?
It was one of his. Yeah, it was one of his favorite characters. He would always pitch it. We did have a Cosmos story definitely in the works for season 4. That may have even been pitched in season 3. So he really liked Cosmos as a character, and that was the reason that I wanted to do. That wasn't the Cosmos story that we pitched, but the idea of giving Derek a direct connection with Cosmos just felt really appropriate.
Yeah.
His other favorite was Swindle.
That comes through, yeah.
And I am told he was a fan of Galvatron, but I don't remember that one coming up in the production. But he very, very much pushed hard for Swindle, and eventually started pushing hard for Cosmos. So
yeah, well, that's kind of where I was going with that, is like, was Cosmos just too precious to put into the show? Were they like saving him for something great? I feel like my first thing would be like, oh, I have a favorite character, I'm going to put it in the first episode.
Well, Derek had a lot of influence, but he didn't necessarily have a lot of power, if that makes sense.
Sure.
He couldn't dictate, oh, we're doing Cosmos. He could just say, I really want to do Cosmos.
Oh, sure.
But he understood, like, we're not going to do Cosmos just to do Cosmos. We're going to do Cosmos because we got a really good story. And so, once he got Swindle off his wish list, then it was, let's try and get Cosmos in there, because, I think there was a fun story about a Cybertronian who, accidentally takes on the Earth mode of a flying saucer and is mistaken for an alien invasion, and hilarity ensues.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and I guess it would have also kind of ruined the storyline you all were setting up with flying Autobots being such an abomination and everything. You'd kind of have to work around that, I guess, if you...
Yeah, we would at least have to pay lip service to, well, why can Cosmos fly?
Well, and I think it's great too, because the Toymaker and the Bots, another famous thing about Derek is how many toys he had. So that's really an appropriate role for him. I guess it did kind of lead me to the question of, do you have any toys, Marty? Or have you collected any toys from Animated in the run, or have any just, cool merch or swag or stuff we couldn't all get from the set?
Well, I've acquired toys. At one point in the production, we all kind of got a package of, a bunch of toys. I don't think, unless I bought a toy as a gift for someone, I don't think I ever paid for one. I think that was kind of part of my, my core philosophy is I'm I don't need to put more money in Hasbro's pocket.
Yeah.
If they want to give me some merch, that's great. But I don't think I've purchased. So I have a lot of toys, but I certainly don't have all of the entire collection.
Sure.
I got the Stunticon job set from BotCon because I wrote the comics. So that was
gosh, yeah. At minimum.
Part of the deal. And then whatever I think there were some other ones that were released that weren't part of the box set, but were separate ones. So I have those. As far as Transformers, the only Beast Machines toy I have is a Black Arachnia that Derek gave me.
Oh yeah.
I don't think those toys were even on the shelf until long after we were done writing the show. So we didn't.
Yeah, some of those got kind of few and far. As a person that was collecting them at the time, they were kind of tough to find for sure.
So you generally, if I do put down money for a toy, it's generally because I want a souvenir of a show I've worked on. So I have a number of the 2003 Ninja Turtles figures. I have figures from the ill-fated Atlantis, which I worked on the series that never came to be.
Okay, if I can just quickly ask, I had anticipated that because I recently watched Milo's Return, and it just felt like huge. It felt like this could be a whole series, and I was just thinking, like, did that come from like a show that never got happen?
Okay. There was a show. There were 30. It was greenlit. It was 39 episodes. I was one of a team of story editors on it. Tad Stones was the producer. And it was actually my first actual staff job where I was had to go into an office and I got a weekly salary and all that. And it was very deep into production. It was Disney pulled the plug on it because they just felt like the movie hadn't done well. None of their networks really wanted it. ABC didn't want it. Disney Channel didn't want it. I think Toon Disney was maybe still a thing. I don't know, but they couldn't. Nobody wanted to air it, so they just decided to cut their losses midway through production. And we had gotten as far as I think we did voice records for probably about half of them.
Wow!
And,
wow!
Yeah, there were already 3 episodes that had shipped overseas for animation. So those 3 episodes were tied together as a single movie, and that's what they were able to salvage from the series. But interestingly, I wasn't involved in any of that. I was aware of it, but I had already been let go because I was the last story editor brought in, so I was the first one to be let go. So Tad Stones very generously put my name on it, but I really had nothing to do with it.
Oh, that's incredible. I love that. I love those little kind of behind the scenes. And Mike, I don't know if you've seen it, but our number one Alita one fan expert, now Black Arachnia from this show expert, Alita. She's a big fan of Atlantis too, and we had a whole sidebar talking about Atlantis. We're like, we can't talk about this during the show, but
oh my goodness,
it's a little nod to her. Who became our kind of Black Arachnia stand-in. I don't know if you were listening, Marty, but we always had her on for a Black Arachnia episode. And
right, because she was such an Alita 1 fan.
Yeah. I think she'd have some words for you about Alita 1 in this.
Oh, I'm sure she did. I mean, I got flack later on. It's like, how come all the female characters have tragic backgrounds? I'm like, well, the real reason is because they weren't toys, so we could do whatever we wanted with them.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was some character who was actually a toy, there was a lot more pushback from Hasbro saying, "Well, we don't want you doing that. We don't want you wiping the mind of something we want to sell as a toy." So
right.
that was the main reason. But yes, in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, we probably weren't too good on our female characters.
Well, I am curious, and maybe just for Lita's sake, asking, where did Lita 1 come into this, and making her kind of the background for Black Arachnia rather than just kind of starting her off as Black Arachnia or any other character. Was there any someone picked that? Did you pick that? Was that name thrown up by Hasbro?
this was, if I'm remembering it right, I always envisioned there being sort of a Batman Catwoman thing between Optimus and Black Arachnia. And as we were developing the story and coming up with the backstory, like her origin, I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if the reason that there's that Batman Catwoman thing is because they have a background, they have a backstory.
Oh, sure.
Also, now I guess the scale hadn't been determined yet. I think the scale of Black Arachnia to the other Decepticons was determined as a result of her backstory. But just something, there's something really tragic about someone who had been an Autobot and through a series. Also, I needed to come up with, well, what is the thing? Why is Optimus banished to this crew of misfits? What was his major screw up that affected the rest of his life? So it all just sort of came together. It's like, oh, well, maybe he's responsible for the Black Arachnia becoming the thing because it went to the spider planet, and and he was ostensibly in charge. So it was all sort of melding together. And then at some point, I think there was a discussion between me and Matt and Derek. Was like, okay, who was Black Arachnia? And probably Derek was the one who said, well, what if she was Elita One? I mean, first of all, there weren't that many female canon characters to choose from. So we were either going to have to make somebody up, or wouldn't it be cool? Because if it's this character, kind of beloved character from the canon that now has this this backstory. So so it wasn't. It sort of evolved naturally into how it became that, but it was never preconceived as that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I guess I just thought of this. This might be a little out of your wheelhouse, but we had talked in that episode about kind of the look and the colors of Elita One before she became Black Arachnia. It's not really taken from anything that we know of. Was that like a Derek character choice? Do you know where that came from?
Oh, I'm sure it was. Yeah, I'm sure it was Derek.
Sure.
I can't say definitively, but I think I would be surprised if it wasn't Derek.
Sure. Well, then the mystery continues, I guess, where those colors came from. I'm really fascinated where that came about. But yeah, we'll get back to that. I want to talk to. We're definitely going to talk more about that episode, and as we talk about the arrival today, I go deep on Black Arachnia and some of those, because as you know, I mean, our beta episode of this show was kind of doing Along Came a Spider, and then we did it again because I love it so much, and it's for like there's a good 10-year span where I watched it every Halloween. That was just my repeat kind of Halloween tradition. So I've serial rewatched that more than any other. So thank you for that episode, especially.
Yeah, and I think that was probably the first episode that I wrote after having done the pilot, after really understanding what the show was more than at the time that I wrote Nanosec, which was pretty basic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's possible. I can't remember the sequence of events, but it's possible that the structure for Thrill of the Hunt was already in place. So that flashback lost structure was there, or this may have been the episode that started the ball rolling on that.
Sure. Was there any proof of concept stuff with Along Came a Spider like there was with Nanosec, or was Along Came a Spider like firmly, after the show was in motion?
Yeah, that was the next episode in the in the production slate.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, it's just like, okay, the assembly line is moving. We got to keep it going.
Right.
So, and I'm trying to remember, was that? Oh, I think we did the Dinobots episode first, and I think maybe Along Came a Spider was after the Dinobots episode, or was there something even in between that? I can't remember the sequence of the episodes.
So in broadcast order, Home is Where the Spark Is, Total Meltdown, Blast from the Past, Thrill of the Hunt, then Nanosec, then Along Came.
Okay, so
wow.
So all right, so Thrill of the Hunt was the one that kicked off the Lost flashback format. So then that was working really well. So then, well, why don't we do this with the Black Arachnia story. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's so interesting how that became such a motif for that show, and it was Mike.
Well,
maybe
I mean, Derek wasn't a fan, but me and Matt we were watching Lost and very.
Well, that's so cool that it came directly from Lost. I think, or you kept going with it from Lost. That was my first thought when I saw it. I was like, "This is Lost. This is Transformers Lost."
Oh yeah, yeah.
In fact, to the point, Michael Andrews, if I remember correctly, early on in the editing of the show, you're like, add in that Lost transition sound effect to the flashback. And I'm like, all right. It didn't quite work as well as we wanted it to, but it's neat to have that confirmed that that's actually what the trope was. Like what we thought it evoked, it's not subtext, it's just the text.
No, it's theft. Is what it is. But I mean, it was nice as a writer because it was a different way of getting into a flashback. Usually in a story, you'd get into a flashback because someone's telling a story. There's someone remembering something, and rather than having an emotional trigger lead into the flashback, I feel like that was very part and parcel to Lost. That it kind of established.
Or the idea that someone wasn't like literally telling someone the story on screen as we're watching the flashback.
Right. Yeah, there's the emotional trigger. So it kind of established a new trope, which we exploited mercilessly.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, it's like, if we ever do like T-shirts or buttons or something, one of them would have to say nothing good ever happens in a flashback.
Very, very traumatic flashbacks in TFN.
Yeah, nobody has happy flashbacks.
It's like just once somebody would be like, oh, I was having a great sunny day in the park and everything was sunshine and rainbows and it was awesome.
But again, that was a big influence on the show. Was okay, here are these misfits that are in this situation that are now on Earth as the protectors of the Allspark. Who were they before? How did they become these misfits? How were they kind of dismissed by Autobot society? And then they get to be heroes in this different environment. So it was very much taken from Lost.
Well, and to continue the metaphor, I guess that makes them being on planet Earth their plane crash, really. I mean, just their survival, their plane wreck, as it were.
We now that I'm looking at the order of the season 1 episodes, Marty, you had mentioned previously and had referred to Nanosec as kind of the pilot, calling it like the Nanosec pilot. And I'm kind of reminded, and it's kind of interesting now that didn't air until number 5. After Total Meltdown, after Blast from the Past, after Thrill of the Hunt. And so could you speak on how kind of like some of this stuff kind of moved around compared to when it was written to when it was produced?
Well, that was fairly typical of development of a series at the time. I mean, what you would get a lot is, give me a pilot episode that's not the origin story. Mm-hmm. We want to see what a typical episode would be like, which is it's a bit of a lift because the origin story tells you the things you need to know, not just as an audience, but as a writer, as you're developing these things, like what this series is. So when you do what they say, episode 5 or episode 7, then you're just sort of guessing. So a lot of it was guessing. I mean, we knew the situation was that Megatron's head would be in Sumdak's lab, that the Autobots wouldn't know about it. I don't know that like huge things about the story changed structurally. I mean, I'm sure some things did. I'd have to kind of go back and look at previous drafts to see what we tinkered with. There were probably specifics about where Sari's use of her key was and what the relationship between Sumdak and the Megatron head was, but I don't recall it having like big major rethink other than when I wrote it, it was Hotshot. That was the Bumblebee character. I can't remember. It might have been Red Alert too. I'm not 100% sure of.
Sure.
Oh yeah. Well, I would love to see Red Alert in that role. As much as I love Ratchet from this show, I would just love to see how Red Alert, the female Red Alert, would play out. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, she would have been similar. She would have been a grumpy old woman instead of a grumpy old man.
Was the crankiness
It
always?
was. I mean, we jokingly referred to her as Nurse Ratchet. I mean, she was going to be closer to Hot Lips Houlihan than, like I think there's a Star Trek equivalent that I'm blanking on, but
like a Nurse Chapel type of.
Yeah, exactly. Like she was going to be a crusty, she was still going to be the veteran of the wars. And,
and
it would have been a different character to see a woman in that role, as opposed to a male. But again, there was a lot of lobbying on the part of Matt and Derek. It's like, let's make it Ratchet.
Yeah. Well, it does come across when we see her in Transwarped. She has that sort of spiel she has to rattle off when someone loses a limb. That's the thing we picked up on right away. It's like, she's done this a few times. Yeah.
Yeah.
The damage is too severe. I'm gonna have to amputate.
What?
Don't worry. Cybertron service will issue a replacement leg within 6 to 8 solar cycles.
So
not a great bedside manner, not very empathetic, just doing her job.
That's really cool. Now that I think back, that kind of adds some additional layers to that scene, right? Because it's her working on Hotshot, and those are kind of the two characters that didn't make the cut at the last second. So that's kind of neat. I
can't say how deliberate that was as far as. Yeah, I think we said let's put them in there as a little wink to the original development.
Oh, that's really cool. We've talked a lot about the writing. Obviously, that's my wheelhouse. I'm really excited to talk to that. I kind of want to know, and maybe this is probably going to be a broad question, but I'm kind of curious to know, what was the day-to-day, script writing, traditional TV writing? How did that differ from some of your roles, video game writing and comic book writing? You obviously worked on the DS game for Transformers Animated. You worked on the Danny Phantom, the Ultimate Enemy DS game, which was awesome. I also played that.
My name is on it, but I didn't work on that one.
Oh, interesting.
It was just based on material that I had co-written, but other than that, I didn't have any involvement with that.
Did you write the Ultimate Enemy?
I co-wrote it with Sid Ventress and Steve Marmel.
Oh, great! Yeah, boy, I love Danny Phantom too. That's kind of my other.
That was a lot of fun.
Ben 10 animated and Danny Phantom, so good.
No, and that was a great run of just Danny Phantom, Ben 10, Transformers Animated, kind of all in a row.
It felt a little bit like they're all in that same universe, or you could kind of, if you did some crossovers, it'd be accepted, I think.
Well, every show you do is influenced by the last show you just did. So,
But yeah, can you talk a little bit about just like the difference between writing for a video game versus writing for a comic versus what you were used to writing television script?
Well, writing for a video game was very, it was very sort of committee-ish. There were a lot of conference calls with the whole design, the game design team. There were a lot of, there's not a lot of flexibility in there because you're dealing with the limitations of what the game is able to do. So we had discussions on when does this take place, where can it take place, we had certain things like, well, there needs to be a race car element to it, and I guess they call it a puzzle level element.
Sure, yeah.
And how many of each, and what kind of story we're going to tell, and what kind of story you can tell given the limitations of the format. So I had a lot more flexibility in the cutscenes, which were presented as just sort of still images with voices, and I think they also had the text on the screen. I don't play those games, so I've only seen it once.
Oh, sure.
Somebody on the crew played through it once for me to see how it all played out, and I think maybe somebody did it on YouTube as well.
Yeah, I imagine.
But that's the only time I've seen it. So I've forgotten a lot of the details of how we worked out the story, and the fact it's the one piece of ancillary material that doesn't really take place in any continuity. It vaguely takes place in season 2-ish.
Oh, okay.
Your mission orders have come in. Help the Autobots save New Droid City. Join the Autobot team on your Nintendo DS and battle the dreaded Decepticons led by Megatron and Lockdown. Choose your favorite Autobot to play as, like Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, Bulkhead, or Prowl. You can also play driving mode, where you and the Autobot team race through the motorways in a fast-paced driving game. Or use teamwork to solve puzzles while fighting the enemy in combat puzzle mode. Plus, content you must unlock to see during your mission. Now you know your mission. Grab your DS. Join the team. Only available on Nintendo DS.
But there's nothing supplemental to the story, whereas all of the stories in The Arrival are supplemental to the show and take place in that same universe and could be considered canon.
Sure. Yeah, Mike, are you kind of in the same boat where you haven't? I feel like I may be the only one that has actually played that game. But
yeah, well, and it's funny because like I didn't even know there was a Nintendo DS game for Transformers Animated until Marty sent us that email, and I'm like, "There's a Nintendo game? Oh, that's cool." Completely off my radar.
Yeah.
One of the fun things I got to do is they sent me to Montreal, which was where the game company was. So I got to spend a few days in Montreal and taking meetings with all of the designers and talking about the the concepts and stuff, and eating some great food in Montreal.
Nice.
So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mike, I if you ever get a chance to like watch the playthrough, or if you get a hold of a DS at any time, you should play through it. There is a lot of like story in it, so I feel like some of your writing, Marty, definitely comes through. But it's also very cool because you're sort of switching, if I remember correctly, you're sort of switching between the characters to get through different puzzles. Everyone's kind of got a power. A lot of axe stuff is where I was going with that. Optimus using his axe in very creative ways. Right. Yeah.
As far as the gameplay, I didn't really have much involvement in that other than conceptually. All right, well, if you need a puzzle thing, maybe it's the Sumdac Systems assembly line factory.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know. We needed who is he racing against and why, and what's the MacGuffin and what ties the whole thing together. It's something to do with an AllSpark something or other. Honestly, don't remember anymore.
Sure.
Well, and that's kind of the engine that makes season 2 go is the quest for AllSpark fragments.
Right.
And it's like that's a concept that you can import to anything, and any kind of ancillary media can be evergreen in that, like, oh well, this is just the AllSpark chase of the week or for this particular episode.
Right. Yeah. So what was nice, and this was largely Steve Drucker's doing at Hasbro, was he felt that if there was going to be ancillary material, that I should be the one writing it, that it would be, it would reflect the show better than even if they're overseeing it and trying to put my sensibility on it. It's like, well, why don't we just get Marty to write them? And a lot of the timing of it worked out where I was able to do it while we were between seasons. So it gave me a little bit of a revenue stream to keep working. Sometimes it didn't work out so well. Like I think the video game in particular was I was doing it simultaneously to the production of season 3.
Oh, wow.
It was, I just remember being very busy. The comic books were a little easier because it was basically, I sent a proposal for what it was originally a 5-issue run. So I sent a proposal for what each of the issues were, and IDW just signed off on it, said, fine, here are your deadlines. And so I just, pretty much wrote the scripts, and they pretty much, drew what I wrote. So that was very straightforward.
Did you, did you follow any like template as far as comic writing go, or did you just kind of do your thing and said, I'm Marty Isenberg, you make it happen?
Well, I wanted to follow the format of I had done some comic writing for Danny Phantom for Nickelodeon. So that was really my first brush with that format. So I think I just followed the same Danny Phantom format, or they may have actually sent me a couple of sample scripts. So I may have followed their format just to really understand what your limitations are as far as panel space and page space, and really try to keep it 5 panels or under per page. So it was a little bit of a logistical issue. It's like, well, I need to get the story point across, but I don't quite have enough panels. Maybe I can throw a panel onto the next page, and so it was a little more technical. And you can't you don't have the freedom and the time to do really extensive dialogue scenes unless you're Brian Michael Bendis. So the dialogue was a little more simplistic than would be in the show, and you just had to get to the point of like what image is going to clarify that action and what's going to move the story forward.
Yeah, that's I'm glad you brought that up, because I really feel like that would be where I could not do comic books, is just the dialogue. And I mean, you're a very dialogue heavy guy yourself. It comes across. I would imagine it's the toughest part is boiling that down to just, here's 1 or 2 lines so you can fit it in the panel. That's got to be tricky.
Yeah, well, I think you start with the story point and the image, and then what's the essential dialogue you need to make this, the story and the action clear. And if there's room for, some cleverness, then great, but there isn't always. Right. Well,
kudos for you on that one. I think, Mike's kind of the comic book guy here. I'm actually embarrassed to admit that I didn't know that there was a different format for comic books, like script, until very recently. And I just thought that was really interesting that, it has its own kind of template for how that's laid out.
Yeah, depending on the writer, the panel description can get very, very, very elaborate.
Yeah. Speaking of Bendis.
Real.
Well, so let me ask you, both Mikes, actually. I'm assuming you, Michael Andrews, you had read The Arrival.
Yes.
Already.
Yes, I have.
So at what point, Mike Seibert, did you read The Arrival, or did you read The Arrival?
I have read The Arrival now. I didn't read it in full until after we watched Endgame. I think it was before we recorded Endgame, but it was as deep as I got to Toymaker and the Bots. It's like, again, like I'm in deep season 3. It's okay for me to start sampling some ancillary media because we're pretty much there.
Yeah, I mean, you could have gotten away with it reading it after season 2, because other than setting up Jetfire and Jetstorm, there were no spoilers. There was, it was all written post or during season 2.
Right.
Yeah, that was one of my, as we're transitioning to talking about The Arrival, that was kind of one of my big questions is, when most of it seems to be set between or around season 1, maybe a little bit in season 2, when production wise were you actually working on it? Was it in parallel? Was it way before? Was it like in the middle of season 2?
I seem to recall it was sort of in the middle of season 2, because it was a 5-issue commitment, and then Hasbro came back to me with let's do the 6th issue. Actually wasn't even supposed to be part of that run. They eventually made it part of that run, but they wanted just something that they could include with the Jetfire Jetstorm packaging, because they wouldn't have yet. I think they were going to be on the shelves before they were on the show, so they wanted just some introduction to the character. So the story actually was Eric Siebenahler's, which I adapted, and so I think we maybe get co-story credit on it, or he may get sole story credit on it, and I just get the script credit.
Interesting. Yeah, I was kind of curious. How did the whole project come together? Was it just like there's more appetite for Transformers animated? Let's get some comics out there, or were these like unproduced episodes maybe that just needed a place?
It was I think it came from IDW or from Hasbro that they wanted a tie-in comic with the show, and they didn't just want to adapt episodes. Like they wanted original content. And again, it was Steve Drucker reaching out to me saying, would you like to do this? We feel like it would be better if it came from you than if we just hired someone to mimic your style. And I said, sure, I'd love to. And I think it also just coincided with probably season 1 coming to an end. So there was going to be a little bit of a hiatus. So it was a way of keeping working on the show and being involved in it. Some of the stories or some of the concepts were things that didn't make it into episodes in season 1. When the show was originally developed, it was really being thought of as more of an earthbound human villains, Transformers as the heroes of Detroit. And eventually the Decepticons would start to trickle in. And as we started doing the production of the show, the Decepticons, once you get them in there, they kind of took over. So the human villains became less important. So there were a number of them, like Stiletto and the Wraith, that I had developed in the original development of the show, but they were just never. I think I'd gotten as far as pitching the story for the Wraith, but it didn't get included in the season 1 run. So I thought, well, let's put it in the comic.
That's interesting. I'm glad you brought them up because I did have questions about them specifically. Stiletto felt like a nanosec role, right? And like working for Megatron to sort of get him, when he couldn't move himself, he was another sort of like ambulatory human for Megatron to use. Was that kind of like, that could have been the premise of the show? I felt like, was there talk of that early on? Like, we're always going to have like a human villain working for Megatron, and then it kind of truncated, or where did that all come into play?
My recollection of the development was, let's come up with a rogues gallery of human villains that would be formidable enough for these giant robots to fight. So I think part of it's like, okay, well, Meltdown has an acid touch, so he could be a threat to these guys. Stiletto can slice through anything, so he could be a threat to these guys. Just the sort of building out the world of Detroit. Well, they're the new superheroes in town. What happened to the old superheroes? Are they jealous? Is there, is there a turf war? Or juris midiction, as someone has famously said.
Yes.
So that's where Wraith came from. So and then Colossus Rhodes. What if somebody's super strong enough to to be a threat to a giant robot? So that was always in the works. And again, Nanosec, who's super fast. So someone who's faster than the fastest Autobot, who is Bumblebee. So.
Well, that's it. So it's kind of like taking a little bit of like the abilities of these giant transforming robots and being like, how do we give this to a human?
Yeah. I mean, basically, it was sort of it's the Superman conundrum, is what's going to be a big enough threat that makes it difficult for these super powerful robots, for these tiny squishy humans to be a threat. So as it was initially developed, it was really more of a, not big on continuity, kind of villain of the week thing, and then we'd start to include Decepticons among those villains of the week, and then eventually Megatron would get his body and he'd be the big threat. But as I say, once you start putting Decepticons in there, and those are the toys, those aren't, the human villains aren't the toys, so there's going to be much more push from Hasbro to put those characters in there, and there's much more push from people like Matt and Derek, who are fans, to put those characters in. So it just, it really, it drifted away from that initial concept. And as we created more continuity, there was just less need for those human villains.
Yeah, the Decepticons are really like kind of like the salt in a dish, right? Like you want to use it sparingly, but once you start tasting it, it's like, oh wow, we need more of this.
But it's interesting though, like with regards to the human supervillains, I took it as almost kind of like a Batman type of thing. If the Autobots are the superheroes of Detroit, where there are humans, that invites escalation, that invites villainy. It's like, well, if you have heroes, you're going to have villains. And I like, whether this was intentional or not, as we're discussing, that like it kind of starts off with, you know, increasingly formidable human supervillains, and then you get to Decepticons, that kind of thing. It's very much a forward slope of trajectory.
Yeah, well, I pushed for that because you first want to establish these guys as the nobodies that they are when you meet them, and then they have this turnabout where suddenly they're cheered on as heroes. So you want to let them be heroes for a bit before you start giving them the real challenges of the Decepticons. Obviously, we had to sprinkle them in a little bit at a time. So we have Starscream comes back in the pilot movie, and then Black Arachnia shows up, and then Blitzwing and Lugnut show up. It's like, oh, now they have to deal with 2 Decepticons. And so it was, you have to build that. If they're 5 Autobots fighting 5 Decepticons from the get-go, there's kind of nowhere to go,
right?
You know, other than just increasing the ranks, and that's essentially G1.
right, exactly. Or the beginning of Transwarped, where it's just this 5-on-5 brawl.
Yeah. You know, we kind of hit on it last time a little bit, but I just want to reiterate the genius. One of my favorite things about Transformers Animated is saving Megatron till the end of season 1. Mm-hmm. You know, I think you see that a lot more now in like the Netflix streaming version of TV shows where you don't have to introduce the villain until season 2. But like for the time to do that then, instead of just first one, here's the bad guy, here's the good guy. I just think that was really cool. And that, you know, that lends to like this sort of maturity of this show.
Well, that was Sam Register in a nutshell. I mean, he did the exact same thing on Ben 10, where he introduces Vilgax, and then, you know, he gets him, you know, so debilitated, and then, you know, he's back by the end of the first season and at full strength. So it was literally the same arc.
Didn't notice that till now, but that's also very
that was the Sam Register specialty. So
I like
but
that.
I think it you know, the series was that much better for it.
Yeah. That's amazing. So, you know, I'm going to take this softball that Michael Andrews has lobbed my way, and I'm going to crush it out of the park like I'm the natural. I'm just going to start rounding the bases as the lights and scoreboard just explode. But with that reveal of Megatron at the end of season 1, you know, in Megatron Rising, you get a line of dialogue that I have since made my entire personality.
Decepticons, transform and rise up.
Obviously, Decepticons Transform and Rise Up has taken a, you know, it's. I think it hit me so hard because I didn't see it coming. I didn't know that was a thing that he said. I was already in for animated. It's like, you know, I had been along this whole season 1 adventure, and then you give me something like that also, and it just you had my heart forever, basically. but I guess like who wrote that line, and was it intended to have like a deeper, more meaningful impact than maybe we had initially interpreted?
Well, I think the first thing is it's a big moment. You want to underline that big moment with a big, you know, rise to power line, big call to action line. And that's where I literally turned to Matt and Derek to say, did the Decepticons have an equivalent to Transform and Roll Out? And they're like, they didn't. Well, I said, well, why don't we come up with one? And so I think we pitched a few between the three of us. And I thought, well, you know, they fly. And then it's Megatron rising. And so like, well, what about Transform and Rise Up? And like, oh, that sounds good. Let's do that. And we may have had to run it past Hasbro. I can't remember, or we may have just did it. But yeah, it's one of those things like, really? They never came up with a Decepticon equivalent to Transform and Roll Out?
No.
What were they thinking? I mean, it was all about catchphrases. How could they miss that one?
Yeah, everyone's frantically rewriting the text and specs on the toys. Now they have a catchphrase.
But of course now you can't use transform as a verb.
I was going to ask you about that because that was the one thing that really caught my ear when Optimus Prime first says it. I mean, we play it as part of the intro of every episode. Optimus Prime says transform and roll out. And it kind of threw me off because we've talked about the kind of parallel production of Transformers Animated and the live action feature. And that feature does not feature transform as a verb. So to have something that's in parallel production, to have it hit my ear. It was kind of jarring. Can you speak to that mandate at all? Because
ultimately it was a way of preserving the brand name, because Hasbro does not own the word Transformers because it means something else, nor does it own the word transform because it means what it means. So that's often the case when you see a character that has a name that they can't own, like Bumblebee. It's Autobot Bumblebee because they own Autobot. So it was a matter of, if the more we use transform and transformers in dialogue, using transform as a verb or referring to Cybertronians as transformers, it weakened the brand name from a legal and ownership perspective. So for whatever reason, possibly they just weren't paying close enough attention. We got away with it, but everything after the movies, and I think once the movies came out, there was so much more at stake. There was so much more to protect that then the mandate came down. We cannot use transform as a verb.
Gotcha. Interesting. I think we both kind of talked. We had a big moment on when that line came up in the show where we just, completely tangent had to talk about it for a while, because for whatever reason, it holds much more resonance than even transform and roll out does. I think I've always been like Autobot guy at heart. I'm really in everything. It's like, I like the good guys, not the bad guys. But when I heard that line, it's like, that was so much more, it meant so much more. The rising up had all these like connotations of, a suppressed society and it was just beautiful. Whereas I think rollout to me always sounded like, that meme of like, the Americans call it fall because the leaf fall down,
Right.
But I think,
well, that was, that's, probably the first thing we said. Well, you can't say transform and fly out. That doesn't work. So it's like, well, what else are they doing? They're lifting they're and then, the idea that, Megatron thinks of himself as a freedom fighter, oppressed, that the Decepticons have been unfairly oppressed by the Autobots, then they are rising up, and they're also literally rising up as they fly into the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that phrase set Mike Seibert free. I think that just changed his whole world when he heard that.
Oh my goodness! But let's talk some comics.
All right.
Yeah. So let's break down the Arrival here, and I'll just kind of go episode to episode. A couple questions from each. I'm going to try to do them in order as much as I have that correct information here. But I want to start with Dispatches. This looks like this is the story kind of retells. Transform and roll out is how TF Wiki says that. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it's really cool. Like, I don't know if that you meant that to kind of set the tone of the whole thing. We always talk about how it got darker in season 3, but this was really like a somber kind of storyline, just assuming Optimus and all of his crew were dead and kind of everyone left on Cybertron to talk about it. Did you, when did this come? Was this the first one you wrote, or did you kind of think, were you kind of thinking more deeply about it to when this came out?
Well, the request from IDW was you can do whatever you want for the other 4 issues, but the first issue, we want you to retell the pilot story, just to kind of introduce the concept to the comic book buying public that might not have seen the show. I can't imagine why anyone would pick up a Transformers comic book without having seen the show, but whatever. So I said, okay, I really don't want to just adapt my own script. Could I tell the story just from different points of view, from things that we would not have seen on screen? And that allowed me, there were a few little things that got cut for time that I could put back in, and then just kind of expand the world of that story to see it from the point of view of characters that maybe weren't fully developed at that point, like Sentinel and Ultra Magnus.
Oh, sure. Yeah, it really captured the I don't know, that weird vibe of like, you know, you're at a funeral and it's sort of a celebration of life and you're kind of laughing and joking because you haven't seen people for a while, but, you know, also something tragic happened. I just thought that was a really interesting tone to strike. Is that where the Marty Isenberg brain goes when they say you can do whatever you want? Does it kind of go to that sort of funny, dark at the same time world?
Yeah, I think that's just where my brain goes naturally. So if I'm going to show another side, you know, like the idea of Sentinel giving a eulogy for Optimus Prime, and then you know we're privy to his interior thoughts, which has nothing to do with what he's saying. That felt like, and it was something you really couldn't do successfully in the in the television or in the animated format. It worked best on the printed page.
Yeah, that specifically really reminded me of Speaker for the Dead, the sequel to Ender's Game sci-fi novel. I don't know if that was source material for this at all.
No, never read it. I may not have even read Ender's Game at that point.
Oh, wow, okay.
I know I read it at some point, but because someone said, "Oh, I want to do something like this. Can you develop?" I forget what the circumstances were, but
yeah. Well, I'll just a little plug for me. I've for years, if anyone asked what my favorite book was, it was Speaker for the Dead. So shout out to that book if you want to read it. But I found it struck a similar tone to this issue, actually.
So yeah, and there was, and I think it's in that scene. There was one panel where the wrong Autobot was speaking, like. Either Ultra Magnus is saying something that Sentinel was supposed to say, or Sentinel is saying something that Ultra Magnus was supposed to say. And it was too late in the process when I saw it, because they weren't sharing the thumbnails and the uncolored pages. And at the point that I saw that mistake, I said, I need to be copied on everything, because there was literally nothing they could do. All they could do was change the dialogue balloon to to have them addressing the correct character, but what was being said by the character should have been said by the other character. So at that point, I absolutely insisted on making sure I saw the roughs, so mistakes like that could not happen again. So it still rankles all these years.
And I guess the answer is probably pretty obvious here, but I guess just to clarify, the long arm that we see in this issue is not the real long arm. Is this well after the switch with Shockwave, or is this like the real long arm we're seeing?
There was only one long arm. That was Shockwave. There's not like there was another Autobot named Long Arm that he took the place of.
Okay. Because I think we've seen some mixed stuff. I think, I don't know, maybe the Allspark Almanac hinted at it, which we've obviously talked about isn't canon, but I think there's a school of thought of, that there was a real long arm Prime, and that Shockwave came in, iced him, and took his role.
No, because he's intruded in Autoboot camp.
Correct.
So that recruit is Shockwave in disguise.
Oh, good. Well, I no matter what.
He's a deep, he is such a deep mole.
Yeah.
There was never a real long arm that he replaced.
Well, now that I clear that up, I guess, was he always Shockwave first in your mind, or was like the long arm the persona?
Didn't think it through that far.
Okay. You didn't get to the psychology of the killer here, did you? Learn every movie makes.
I think it was a similar situation like Jetfire and Jetstorm. Like, we have this one protoform that we saved that we can, that we can. I'm just spitballing now, but it was probably a project that began before the Allspark was lost. It was probably a long-term Decepticon infiltration project that predated the end of the war.
That's very Shockwave-esque. Actually, just this kind of came to mind. One of our listeners, Matthew Barbario sent us a clip over Instagram, and it was Corey Burton talking about, early conversation you had with him about, was there a character that he didn't feel like got a lot of attention or didn't get to do much with in the G1 cartoon? What would you do with it now? And he had said you had specifically asked him that.
He didn't do much in the original series. So when we did Transformers Animated, Marty said, "Oh, is there any character that you felt you didn't get to do enough of in the original series?" And I said, "Yeah, Shockwave," because I wanted to really make him something more meaningful, more mysterious, more, kind of a world-weary, sad soul in a position of authority, but basically is just this keeper of the books out in space.
And then he kind of wanted to do Shockwave as more of like, this lonely guy. Was that much of Shockwave already in place, or did this kind of come from that conversation with him?
If it did, I didn't have that conversation. Derek or Matt might have had that conversation, but there was sort of a gradual evolution. We knew that there was going to be a traitor amongst the Autobot camp platoon, and for a long time it was going to be Cliffjumper was going to be the traitor.
Oh, okay.
And then at the 11th hour, Hasbro said, "No, let's not make Cliffjumper a bad guy. Again, it's a toy. We don't want to, rankle, anyone who is a fan of that character or whatever. Let's make it a completely new and different character." So somewhere, because I'm not sure Wasp as a concept came sort of later as part of that. So I think at one point we were going to develop Wasp as the actual traitor. And then we said, well, maybe there's a traitor and then there's someone who's a patsy.
Right.
Yeah.
So then we said, well, yeah, so maybe if Wasp is the patsy and then he's sent away and he goes nuts and comes back as Waspinator, that's cool.
So tragic, however you want to say it.
Who's the real traitor? And I think we started literally going through a book of names that Hasbro, like, we definitely had a book of names, like, can you work this into the show somewhere just so we can keep the copyright? And I think there was a character named Longarm that may have only been a toy. I couldn't tell you for sure, but there's that's kind of an interesting name. And then somewhere in there, and it certainly didn't come from me, and it probably came from Derek, is like, well, what if it was Shockwave in disguise and he had a way of retracting his size so he didn't have the scale of a Decepticon, and then the name Longarm seemed to work with that.
Yeah.
So it was just like all of these puzzle pieces came together and pretty much set up the rest of the season, and really more so set up season 3.
Yeah.
All of the puzzle pieces in there. But that was one of those. It started with, all I had is I wanted to do a flashback episode for Bumblebee and Bulkhead because we hadn't done that yet. And I just love this idea of Bumblebee's ambitious. Does everything he can to try and become an elite guard member, and all Bulkhead wants to do is be a space bridge repairman. And and at the end, and I just had that scene at the end where the Bumblebee just comes in. It's like, oh shit, I'm a space bridge repairman, and Bulkhead's like, yes, I made it.
Whoa, yes! I have arrived! A bona fide space bridge technician! Yeah!
Oh, that's awesome.
And that was the extent of it. And then, I just figured, it'll be sort of wacky, police academy stripes, Abbott and Costello and Buck Privates kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we started talking about the whole idea of, well, there's a traitor amongst them, and so there was a lot of conversation that took place. It may have taken place prior to bringing Mike Ryan into writing it, or it may have been part of the process of developing the story with him.
I was going to ask you about that because, Marty, that kind of goes back to when you and I met at TFCon LA in 2024, and I rolled up to your table, told you about the podcast and all that. And the first thing you had asked me is, had I gotten to Auto Boot Camp yet? And at that point, we hadn't. And when I went and shared that with Michael Andrews, he was kind of blown away. He's like, Marty didn't even write that one. It's like, he's excited for you to check out an episode he didn't even write. What gives?
Well, I mean, I didn't write it as much as I didn't write anything, which is to say I wrote a lot of all of it because I was editing it and it's part of the conception of it, and every step I'm putting my input into it. So by the end of it, in my mind anyway, feels like a collaboration between me and the credited writer. So, gotcha. But I just the lift that episode was able to pull off and still be a really funny, fun and entertaining episode in its own right.
Yeah.
I just thought, that's one that really set in motion everything that followed.
Mm-hmm. Well, that kind of, it doesn't take a lot to get me talking about Auto Boot Camp. I really think that's my favorite episode of the whole show. But I also had a question about that. Was there any other episodes that had that sort of like tentpole thing? Like there's 5 things I want to show for sure in the entire run of this show. Auto Boot Camp is one. Was there any other episodes like that where you felt strongly about, we need to see this?
I feel like in a lot of ways, the Prowl flashback, five Servos of Doom, I felt like we needed to do, because it was, all right, this is season 3, so we hadn't really done his backstory yet. So we needed to tell that. We created some mystique around the whole concept of the Cyber Ninja Corps and how Jazz was a member. And it felt like we need to define that. What is that? And then how that, and we also need to understand the importance of the protoform. So it's like, okay, these two things can possibly work in conjunction with one another if the Cyber Ninja Corps' main function is to protect the protoforms. So that gave us a lot in the course of that, just the flashback part of that story.
Yeah, that one does do a lot of heavy lifting.
And then saying, well, what if we hadn't intended necessarily for Lockdown and Prowl to have this connection, but it's like, well, what if Lockdown was a cyber ninja gone rogue?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I feel like probably that was the one episode where we felt like, we need to get a lot of concepts in there. It didn't necessarily, I mean, it didn't quite have the same effect of, there's so many things we're setting up in here that we have to pay off, and it's going to take us several episodes to pay them all off. But it wasn't, and again, when we set these threads in Auto Boot Camp, we didn't specifically know how they were all going to get tied together. We just thought, well, that's intriguing. That's fodder for stories down the road. And then we'll figure out how they all tie in together. But it's just like that, to coin a phrase, that tells you there's more than meets the eye to this world.
Yeah. Truly Auto Boot Camp just, has its threads and everything, really, really kind of paved the way for the rest of the show in a lot of ways.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. Very much a turning point, I would say.
Yeah.
And again, it was part of Cybertronian society we'd never seen before. Like, if it is very military, shouldn't there be a boot camp? What's that like? Wouldn't that be funny if they have to, transform like it's push-ups?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. Are you more a fan of calling them transform-ups or transformies? Because I think they're more like burpees. Some other people on this show think they're more like push-ups.
It's transform ups. That's what's in the script. That's what everybody is saying.
Well, all right.
I'm not sure burpees wasn't part of my lexicon at that point.
How do you like the sound of Transformies? Is that sort of cute? Do you like that? Do you hate it?
Let's
just workshop
sounds
it right
like
now.
cute little Transformer Cupid dolls.
That's right. It does. I'm willing to admit now Transform Ups is a better name for them.
It sounds like the preschool version of Transformers that Rescue Bots is too sophisticated to be.
Oh man! Marty Isenberg with the folding chair back on his head.
It's a burn and a great idea at the same time, actually.
Oh, it's a deep burn. Oh, it's so deep. Ah.
All right. Back to the show. Enough fun, guys. Enough time. Yeah, moving on the list here. Attention surplus disorder. We kind of talked about this one earlier with the Wraith. And I think this is really interesting because I think I didn't really even take it as the premise of like, oh, there were heroes before. What happened to them? That's a really interesting take that I never even kind of put together in the world of Transformers animated. Was the Wraith in your mind spoofing any particular superhero? Was he amalgamation of all?
I mean, he was meant to be pretty Batman-like, in terms of what he could do. I mean, Wraith suggested ghost-like powers, so there was that there. The little fun that I had, again, since the issue takes place in Detroit and he needed a big audience, why not put it in Michigan Stadium? Both my brothers and my mother went to University of Michigan. I did not. Also, Dwayne McDuffie went to University of Michigan, and he was working in the building at the same time, so I thought he might get a kick out of that. So it's just a little in joke. Yeah. So just putting it in Michigan Stadium in Ann Arbor was a little nod and a wink to
I love that
to people.
Well, and that speaks to the locality, the hyper local thing that sets Transformers Animated apart from other iterations. Like, G1 takes place in like a vague Pacific Northwest, that kind of thing.
Right.
I love that TFA is explicitly Detroit, and I love with that color scheme that Bumblebee gets to be Wolverine. That's
right, exactly. He gets to be a Michigan Wolverine.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. So it was all of that kind of stuff. And also, Derek is a Michigander, so there was definitely some local Michigan flavor from him as well.
That brings up something I wanted to ask last time. The setting of New Detroit. Was that just New Detroit, or was the whole world supposed to be like that, sort of technologically evolved, or was that kind of just local in the world of animated?
Since we never ventured outside of it, we never really thought about that. I would assume probably the whole world, in the same way that Silicon Valley has implications far beyond the local the local geography. Right. But that was Sam Register's idea, and I believe it was because his wife was from Detroit.
Oh, okay.
He felt like, Detroit's been battered around enough. Let's give him a happy future.
Yeah.
Well, it sure fit the theme of cars and car robots and reviving that industry and stuff. That was really it all really fit perfectly.
Yeah, and I think that was a big part of the impetus for it. Is let's set it in the in the headquarters of automotive, the automotive world, and then just add the fictional. It's also the headquarters of the robot world, which is even superseded what the automotive industry was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's interesting. I always kind of pictured it like there was a dome around Detroit, and it was a vision of the future, and the rest of the country was
it's not Wakanda,
looking in, kind of a thing.
But and I think the design of the plant was based on an old Ford plant.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah, I just like that it's kind of like the anti-RoboCop. You know what I mean? It's like in the future Detroit gets worse. No, it's just nice to see that
it actually gets revived, and it's a thriving metropolis.
Yeah. Yeah, but we spent a lot of time litigating how much of Sumdac systems and how much of that technological influence goes beyond it. But I really like the way you've put it today, Marty, where it's like, yeah, that's the Silicon Valley. That's kind of the hub, and things are probably more advanced, especially advanced in Detroit. But yeah, the world at large is doing okay.
Awesome. All right, moving on to Stiletto.
Yeah.
This apparently, according to the Allspark Almanac, this is between the events of Lost and Found and Survival of the Fittest. This one we kind of talked about a little earlier. This feels very much to me like an unproduced episode. Stiletto's backstory is just so thought out. Was there any talk of this being like an episode, or was this really just kind of, another one from your mind off the cuff?
I mean, Stiletto was just listed as a potential villain in the series Bible. And then as far as the story was for the Arrival comic, I think it was just another sort of in the series of it's Megatron test driving some element of his body to be.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, was along with that, was Stiletto based on anyone? Kind of in the same way like Angry Archer was Aaron Archer,
No.
Time Trucker?
No, for the most part, what we would call the teaser villains were the ones that we could get goofier with and base them on Hasbro people. But the more serious villains, we didn't like. Even Nanosec is not based on anybody.
Right.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And then we go to Bots of Science, which is actually my favorite of the series. That's a big one for me. And I found this interesting because it was actually expanded and adapted to Adventures in Reading book called Bots of Science.
Yeah, I saw that online somewhere.
And that makes sense because I think that's how I first encountered it. I think I came across it, like babysitting my, niece and nephew, and it was at the library.
That's an awfully dark story to adapt for young readers. That actually surprised me.
Yeah, I know, right? Right. So where does that story come from? I guess I'm trying to place these in the context of, they're great stories on their own, but are these all doing a little heavy lifting of setting up stuff that we see later in the season, or were some of them just kind of like one-off for funsies?
Well, that was kind of a favor to Hasbro. That Oil Slick was a toy that we were not required to use in the show, but I thought, well, let's give him a story. So I put it in the comic, and I think it was probably a result of Thrill of the Hunt, and there was a lot of very, very positive online fan response to the more serious tone of that flashback of the war. So I thought, well, I can probably do another sort of serious-minded war story that introduces Oil Slick and give him an encounter with Ratchet, and the idea that they have this commonality, but they one is using his science at a very evil ends, and one is using it toward healing ends. So it was just an opportunity to tell another war story and sort of.
Well, you got to get that war story in there so they can adapt it for young readers. I mean, it's
exactly.
Very important.
Still scratching my head over of all the stories you chose to adapt. Yeah. You went through that really dark one.
Never too early for trauma, kids. I mean, again, I saw that 86 movie at 7 years old. It's never too early for trauma.
Yeah.
Very strange decision.
You got to learn. Toughen them up.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that that issue did specifically was, I kind of thought maybe it was to set up that Rodimus survived, right? Because I think there's some talking points in there of the cosmic rust is curable. When we see in the show, we just assume Rodimus is dead because, he turns to rust and he crumbles. We had Dark of the Moon out at a similar time where cosmic rust was a element to it. But I thought maybe this was like teeing up that he survived
well, this was written before we even knew we were going to do that bit. So.
Oh wow! Awesome.
Because Oil Slick was introduced in the comics, and then it was kind of an afterthought to put him in the Transwarped opener.
Oh, interesting.
And since we'd already established...
Yeah, did you say he was going to be a toy first?
He was a toy first. He was designed as a toy, as toy only. Was not, I mean, it was sort of like, if you find a place for him, you're welcome to put him in, but you're not required to. And then we thought we liked the design. We liked, as we developed the concept of him as sort of a chemical warrior. And again, that concept was pretty dark. We're not necessarily going to put that in season 1 or 2, but with with the gates open in season 3 to do darker things, it's like, oh well, why don't we give him cosmic rust? Maybe he dies, maybe he doesn't die. We don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of kismet, actually. Did that design then come from Derek, or was that like a toy designers mimicking his style?
He adapted that, but I think it was the toy. I think the toy was doing all the work. I think obviously
that's fascinating.
There was influence on Derek's style. I mean, he may have done a pass on it, and that's a good question for Eric Siebenaler. I really don't know. I just know that it was part of the lineup, the toy lineup, that was not necessarily going to be part of the series.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, this is just finding out new little threads of the sweater I got to keep pulling, apparently, every time we talk.
Well, and the thing I was going to interject in with also is, Oil Slick only has one line of dialogue in that beginning of Transwarped, and it's Phil Lamar. And I remember gravitating towards that because I wonder, knowing now what we know about Bumper Robinson's interpretation of Blitzwing, I wonder if Phil Lamar was kind of like influenced that in a way, because it's kind of like a German mad scientist type of voice.
If I'm remembering right, I think maybe the direction we gave him was a little bit more like Michael Ansara's Mr. Freeze.
Oh,
just very, very, very emotionless. He's just very, he's evil because he doesn't have any empathy. He's just wants to see what his chemical concoction will do.
Yes. It would move me to tears if I still had tears to shed.
You say that like it's a difficult thing, Autobot.
Yeah, one of the takeaways I had from this, maybe this doesn't mean anything to anyone on this call, but I thought it was kind of a setting up sort of like what we see from Knockout and Transformers Prime. I know, Marty, you wrote maybe an episode or 2 of Transformers Prime. I don't know how, into the whole lore of the show you are, but I just really thought that like the evil Decepticon medic or someone that's using similar technology to Ratchet, but like in a completely different way, really kind of led up to what we see of Knockout in Prime.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how directly that was influenced. I think it's it's sort of it's a natural place to go. It's like if Ratchet is one of your characters, then what's the evil version of Ratchet?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that Dwayne Capizzi looked at Oil Slick and thought, oh, I want to do that. Or if anybody at Hasbro said, why don't you do something like this Oil Slick character? I suspect he just came up with a similar idea independently.
Sure, yeah. Like a good idea, a natural idea.
Yeah.
Perfect. Going on to Insincerest Form of Flattery. This Allspark Almanac places this after the events of Headmaster, which debuted Porter C. Powell, so that makes sense. This is the one where there's all these bulkhead repaints.
Yeah.
It's like the car dealer, and they have all these crazy things. Where did that come from? Was that just something you wanted to do a light one?
Yeah, I think that was actually a Derek idea. Just like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if Porter C. Powell, made all of these bulkhead, knockoffs based on bulkhead, and I was like, oh, can I use that for the comics? He's like, yeah, sure.
That's awesome.
So, I think it's a missed opportunity. I seem to recall that was a Derek idea.
Sure, awesome. I think it's a missed opportunity to not repaint some bulkhead toys in those colors that came out of that. There's some cool designs.
Yeah. Well, the repainter segment of the fandom is welcome to to do them if they haven't already.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I should look in. I wonder if someone took that upon themselves because they're all right there. I mean, you can see them from any angles. It'd be a slam dunk.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they'd probably look really weird when you transform them into robot.
True.
But that wasn't Portishead Powell's problem. So
Right.
So then we have a few loose strands. This story takes place before the events of Thrill of the Hunt. It seems almost like a prequel, in a good way, a prequel to both Thrill of the Hunt and Along Came a Spider, right? This is the one that mashes up Lockdown and Black Arachnia. Again, this one just seems like really kind of intricate and evolved as far as being inserted in the timeline. Did you have to play like any expert level of inserting this in the story? Did you have to think more about like where this falls in the timeline?
Well, I think it was just, it came from the idea that, we introduce these characters. Somehow they get to Earth. We don't really explain how or why. Is it possible they could have had an encounter prior to Earth? And I had it in my head that they're both back there at the ship looking for something.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I think Lockdown specifically says something like he's looking for spare parts and mods or something.
Right.
And Black Arachnia is looking for something, but we don't say what it is.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the tension in that because they both kind of have their reasons for going to Earth. It's one of the stories where, it's kind of that Hemingway thing of like, they're not talking about what they need to talk about. Like, I really appreciated that kind of take on it. I guess if I can bring up a moment to talk about Black Arachnia a little bit, we had kind of wondered, or I had wondered, like, does she consider herself like a true Decepticon, or is she just kind of like playing the odds at the moment? Did you ever like commit to what she was?
I don't think she ever drank the Kool-Aid, is my personal feeling. And in the way that we introduce her in Transform and Roll Out, where she is very cynical of, granted it's Lugnut who's so over the top about his commitment to the cause.
Megatron is wise, Megatron is bold, Megatron will return the Decepticons to Cybertron
and wipe our homeland clean of the stench of Autobot tyranny, blah, 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 blah.
But she is very much above it all. And she's a survivor. She's an opportunist. She's just had to in order to survive. So she's toughened herself up because of her tragic circumstances, and she will do what she needs to do to survive.
Mm-hmm. So, well, let me ask you this. Maybe this is just personal opinion too, or like, where do you place her on the spectrum between Autobot and Decepticon? Does she lean one in your mind?
Honestly, I think she doesn't trust anybody, and that's she's been burned by everybody. So she is her own faction, and that's kind of where we were heading with Predacons Rising, is she's going to start her own faction.
Yeah.
Her arc was meant to be that she has so much self-loathing because of her appearance and what she's become, and then at some point she has the turn where she realizes what she has become is in fact greater, at least in her mind.
Yeah.
And is really the next wave in the evolution of Cybertronians, and really, it's kind of the Planet of the Apes thing where it's like she leads the revolution that creates the world of Beast Wars and Beast Machines, where everybody is has some organic component to them.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, she's such a interesting, layered, tragic kind of character throughout this whole show. Was she always Black Arachnia? And what I mean by that was there always this thing of like, well, let's grab someone from Beast Wars right away to show that, we can take from all the lore? Or was she like going to be a car at some point?
No, she was never going to be a car. It was just an odd inclusion, and I had nothing to do with it. That was the lineup that I was given.
Oh,
so the series Bible, the development Bible that I was handed to rewrite, she was already part of it. This is the lineup. Where these are the Decepticons, these were the Autobots. I'm like, oh, sure. Cool, Black Arachnia. I wrote her before, so
yeah.
There's a little bit of familiarity there. So I didn't resist it in any way, but I recognized that it makes no sense. So we have to make it make sense.
Yeah,
sure. Well, I felt like you pulled in some of your Beast Machines past into her for sure. Some of that, like the techno-organic stuff, even talking about Sorry and like the protoform stuff later on, I thought some of those sensibilities came out of the Beast Machines era.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of similar concepts, a little bit of a nod to the show itself, and also just given that she is in this world, given that Sorry is in this world, where could that lead ultimately? Could it lead to a similar situation that we established in Beast Machines?
Yeah, interesting.
Well, and it's just fascinating to tug on that thread a little bit, because Sorry has a couple encounters with Black Arachnia, obviously very early on, and then later as well. But in both instances, it's before we, the audience, and Sorry herself learns about her, some of the truth of where she comes from. Mm-hmm. I wonder what a confrontation between Black Arachnia and Sorry Sumdac would look like after Transwarped. Like if those characters intersected again, where Sorry now has a greater understanding of who she is and what she is, and through the kaleidoscope of who Black Arachnia is and who she is and what she is. That's incredibly fascinating to me.
Well, that was season 4 as I wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just, and I've said this in the past, is that I felt like we told Megatron's story.
Yeah.
That we need to at least give him a rest, if not, take him out of the picture entirely. There was something interesting to me about putting him in the Hannibal Lecter role, where he's even behind bars, he's still pulling the strings.
Right.
And I thought that's interesting. That almost puts him back to where he was in season 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to give Black Arachnia more of a chance to breathe as a villain, because she's a very interesting character. But again, because she's a female character, those toys don't sell as well, so there's not as much of a push to put her front and center. But that's, dramatically, that's where the story wants to go.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. All right, well, let me do a little bit of a lightning round here as we wrap up these last few issues. I want to be conscious of your time, Marty, and thanks again for being with us today. So survival skills, this is kind of a brief one where Optimus fights sort of a simulation of Megatron. What kind of struck me from this was that it takes Megatron out of this kind of Darth Vader-y phantom character and being, having the elite guard make simulations of this guy means he's a pretty big deal. I guess why was it important to you to show Optimus not just knowing of Megatron, but being like warned of him in a way, or having faced him in battle already? Was there any reason for that?
Just that we'd gotten this far and hadn't really had the Optimus Megatron showdown, and how could we do that? How could we present that and still make it make sense within the continuity of the show, and then kind of create this false ending beat where Megatron handily defeats Optimus. So again, to just sort of remind the audience just how outmatched Optimus is, even in just a simulation of Megatron.
Oh, sure.
And then that simulation idea we were able to use again in the Jetstorm.
Oh,
issue,
yeah. That's
once
right.
that had been established. But there may have been a request from IDW or from someone who's like, can we see an Optimus Megatron confrontation? And I'm like, no, but here's how we could do it. But Optimus has to lose.
Right.
Yeah. I want to briefly mention Everything Must Go, but the meat and potatoes for me is First and Second in Flight. So I just the big takeaway from Everything Must Go is I always thought of like Blitzwing and Lugnut as kind of this forever dynamic duo, but this sort of story makes them their partnership kind of recent, and Swindle kind of was the impetus of it all. Did you, I guess, was that important to you to show that they I always thought of them as like this dynamic duo, best friends, but maybe in your mind, they're not friends at all, really. They're just kind of a team.
Well, they are, but it's like, well, what could drive the wedge between them?
Oh, sure.
So it's really influenced by two Dr. Seuss stories. Primarily, it's the Sneeges, but it's also the Butter Battle book.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's just like here's Swindle escalating, creating and then escalating the arms race between these two.
Oh yeah, that's good.
I gotcha. I just love that they're so mismatched. That Lugnut is such a simp for Megatron, and that Blitzwing is such a wild card. It's a really fun dynamic to see those two together.
Yeah, I think they're probably the only two who could stand to be together. with either.
Well, they're both deranged, right? Like that's the thing they have in common.
Yeah,
right.
And they both think each other is crazy. That's the really
right. But Lugnut's crazy is so laser focused, and such blinders on. And Blitzwing's crazy is just the opposite. He's in three different directions. The third direction, which is in infinite number of directions. They do sort of balance out each other.
That's incredible. So moving along to First and Second in Flight, this is obviously the origin story of Jetfire and Jetstorm. Probably some tie-in with a toy coming out. Important that this one get out there. I guess generally, who were these two characters based on anybody? I mean, Mike and I kind of thought they were a little bit Borat. We had another listener, Alpha Magnus, that thought they were more Hans and Franz. Was there any sort of famous duo that inspired them?
So yeah, there was a couple of inspirations. I don't think the Borat movie had come out yet, so that wasn't on my radar.
Sure.
But I had this notion of like Eastern European acrobats, and I'm not sure where that came from.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Flying Melendas or something like that.
Sure.
And then primarily personality-wise, they were the Wild and Crazy Guys.
After all, there's no other pair of Czech brothers who cruise and swing so successfully in tight slacks. We are two Wild and Crazy Guys!
They were
okay.
and Aykroyd, where they're just kind of the foreigners who don't quite, they're trying to be hip and current, but they don't quite get it.
Yeah.
So that was primarily their personality, and then a little bit of the Hanson brothers from Slapshot.
What are you guys doing?
Putting on the foil.
Every game.
Yeah, you want some?
No.
They're just sort of these kind of these unpredictable, sort of crazy young Turks who will just, you can just throw them at anything. And
I love it.
That was the origin of them. And then it was in the comic, it was another opportunity to see Sentinel as a drill sergeant, which was lots of fun.
Back to his roots.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely see that take on him when they take on the Dinobots. The whole, I thought that was such a great punchline, because the whole show, everyone was struggling with the Dinobots. They were such a formidable force. And then those two kind of step up to the plate and they're just like, these guys, these are your problem. We leveled them in about 3 seconds.
Yeah. That's that's the fun of them, is they are rather competent.
Yeah.
Just personality wise, they're just kind of clueless, but
well, yeah, they're kind of, they're sort of made into be this ultimate weapon of the elite guard, right? I think that's where a lot of my questions go from here is, did you Did you ever get into the morality of, were they weapons, or like was the elite guard doing something really evil by sort of making them, or did you see it as like a heroic effort by the elite guard? They saved these two from this accident, and they made them better than before, stronger. They had the technology.
Well, I guess it's a little RoboCop-y,
Yeah.
Is it heroic or is it evil? It's kind of both, right?
Yeah.
We didn't delve too much into the morality of it. Just sort of, okay, that's the backstory. That's why we have flying Autobots.
Yeah.
I don't know that we ever had any intention of getting as deep RoboCop-y about it. And I think, because they were just such goofy personalities, that tragic aspect of their backstory wouldn't really play.
I think maybe I went a little too far with it when we were actually discussing the characters on the show, because this to me really felt like the most corrupt thing the Elite Guard did. And I had even theorized that maybe they had caused the accident in the first place just to set these two up to need it. And I kind of
that's darker than I would have gotten.
Okay, all right, that wasn't
it was corrupt, but I think it was desperate and reckless. The fact that they're putting. They're pitting them against this program based on Starscream was maybe not the smartest thing to do.
Yeah. Well, and even that felt kind of icky, because it's like they're taking this, prisoner of war, and they're taking something that's kind of unique to his DNA, and then force. And it's kind of seen as a flying Autobot is kind of seen as an abomination on both sides. I think both sides of it are really startled by it, and that's what kind of makes them unique characters. But I guess I was just reading too nefariously into the Elite Guard in that moment.
No, I think I'm a little more forgiving of them. It's more of a desperate times call for desperate measures. I mean, the same kind of desperation that led into the creation of Omega Supreme.
Right, because I think our perspective on the more darker, more nefarious interpretation is kind of a post-transwarp sensibility. It's like we've seen what the Autobot government does. So I think the deeper we got into the discussions, more things became retroactively darker. Like, oh my gosh, how deep does the rot go? How corrupt is the Autobot government? It's like, did they engineer the war to begin with? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like we got pretty far into the weeds of how dark and dystopian.
I always saw it as when you're up against Decepticons, you have to make some pretty difficult choices to keep your way of life because I think everything, as bad as everything the Autobots do, it would be worse under Megatron.
Yeah, categorically.
This is a little bit more of a design question, so I understand if you don't have a well thought out answer for it, but I was always just curious, where the orange and blue came from. Was it just that there was a nice complementary color, or was it I kind of maybe thought maybe they were wearing Sentinel's colors, they admired him in such a way that they ended up orange and blue, or he was their personal.
I suspect it probably goes back to the toy design and then incorporating that into the character design, because they were. It was one of the few occasions where Hasbro really said, we're using these characters, as opposed to, what do you think if we use these characters? Or us saying, hey, could we use these characters? It was basically marching orders. Jetfire and Jetstorm will be in season 3 because we're doing these characters who do this combiner thing into Safeguard, which is the worst name ever in the history of Transformers. Why would you name your character after a soap?
Or a windshield repair company.
Nobody consulted me on that, so it was just like, okay, let's make them work as best as we can make them work, and make them part and parcel to the show, and make them fun, and something different from what we already have in the show. So I think that sort of handed that puzzle of these twin jets, and what are their personalities, and kind of play against that whole, they're the best of the best, they were created, and to be the make them kind of goofy and make them a little clueless, and play against they're very, very powerful. So
yeah.
I think it makes it more entertaining, and it just gives us another kind of flavor to play with.
I thought it was really interesting that they're combining in the story, that they're combining came from them just being like twins. That wasn't actually part of the technology.
It wasn't intentional on the part of the
the upgrade was just to make them fly, and then
right.
Their spark coming together was made them combine, and even their powers, even though it fit their name, their powers came out of like defending each other, right? Like the extinguishing the flames was to save the brother. I just thought there's a lot of touching elements to that.
For sure. So, friends, I think let's leave that there for now. Because I think completing the Arrival and the Jetfire, Jetstorm safeguard stuff is a really good button to leave things off as a good capstone. Marty, before we let you go, I want to show off a little bit merchandise spotlight. I found myself at my local eating and drinking establishment, and I saw a little activity placemat. All
right.
Wow.
Very nice.
There's a maze and a Spot the Imposter, Iron Imposter, and some other activities as well. So I want to remind folks that Iron Man and His Awesome Friends is available on Disney Plus currently. I think it's shown on Disney Junior first. But yeah, so Marty, when we had you on last time, I think the show was imminent, but it hadn't dropped yet. Now that the show is out there, has there been any kind of a response to that, or anything that you wanted to talk about with regards to Iron Man and His Awesome Friends?
Just really that it's out there. It seems to be getting some pretty good positive response. It was a lot of fun to work on. I'm so busy on the thing that I'm working on now that I haven't had a lot of time to sort of bask in it. And I came to the writing staff on that show a little later in the run. So maybe one or two of my episodes is part of this initial batch, but I'm not certainly the first 10 or so I was not involved in. So it's less of a personal victory lap for me, but I'm excited for the show, and I hope it does very well, and I hope it sells lots of toys, and I hope we get lots of Iron Friends trick-or-treaters at my house come October, and
it seems like lots of fun. It seems like fun to write for something like
that. I just think it's a super fun show for the younger set. It's a nice introduction, like Spidey and His Amazing Friends. It's a nice introduction to the Marvel universe.
Absolutely. Two things relevant to our audience. One, David Kaye has a role in Iron Man and His Awesome Friends. He is the Vision.
He's a recurring character, so he should be in several episodes.
Oh, cool.
He's like their mentor figure.
I am here to help.
No matter how many times you float through walls, it's still so cool.
I think you are also very cool.
Good thing solid objects can pass through you, too.
I can also fly. All the better to help out here at the IQ.
Yeah, which is a really cool take on that as well. And Mark Hoppus from Blink 182 did the theme song.
Yes, and it's an awesome theme song.
It is. It's great.
It is. It rocks. I love the theme song. It's like I never get tired of hearing it.
It's a new day, Tony. Get your boots on. Riri, you're the greatest Amadeus. We're the coolest team ever. Save the world together. Suits up, masks down. Heroes wanna have fun. Let's go! It's totally awesome when I'm with my best friends. It's better than chocolate. It's better than weekends. We're up in the skyline. We're following our hearts. We're having a great time. Nobody can stop us. We're totally awesome.
Totally awesome to coin a phrase.
Yeah, exactly. Totally awesome. No, it's very cool and very fun. So good stuff. Good fun stuff for again. If you like TFA, if you like this kind of stuff, if you like us, I think there's some stuff there for you. Again, it's it's not for us in the regards it's meant to be a preschool introduction type thing, but that doesn't mean there aren't like fun, cool things to check out as well. So anyway, go.
If you have young kids, if you have nieces and nephews or next door neighbors or whatever, give them a look at it. I think they'll enjoy it.
Gotcha. Well, friends, I think we've done it for this session. Marty, we talked a lot about Iron Man. Is there anything else that you want to call out or promote while we got you?
Nothing I can talk about yet.
Ooh.
I am NDA'd, and so I can't say, but I am working very hard on something.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Well, I'll be here for it. For sure.
Regardless.
Yeah.
All right, friends. Well, that is going to wrap it up for this episode. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. And again, thanks to Michael Andrews and Marty Isenberg and me, Mike Seibert, for continuing to hang out with us as we continue the deep dive journey into Transformers Animated beyond the 42 episodes and ancillary media and beyond. But yeah, we're going to close the Isenberg files for now, but we will return at some other point. So, keep it going in the social medias, keep the conversations going. And, we are here. We are waiting. No, that's
another.
Yeah. And make good choices.
Yeah. Awesome.
And have some pizza.
And have pizza. Please have some pizza.
Want to be a part of the show? Send us an email to mikes2furious@gmail.com. You can also comment on episodes on Spotify and on YouTube. Follow us on Blue Sky individually at Mike Seibert Radio and at Michael Andrews, respectively, and follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 2Mikes2Furious. All right, so hey, Michael Andrews,
yes,
how would you like to dip into the mailbag before we part ways?
Yes, I got my trunks on. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, I was gonna say now that we got rid of that Marty Isenberg, we're now talking like ourselves.
Finally,
get that guy out of here, golly. But yeah, let's.
Jokes aside, though, awesome to talk to him. Like,
oh my god,
wow! Like this is like dream of a dream moment for me. I'm just barely holding it together when we're talking to this guy.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a dip in the mailbag because we haven't revisited the mailbag since the Endgame extravaganza, and let's learn what folks have had to say because we've made it our statement that we're gonna kind of keep the podcast going for at least a little bit longer and talk about continuing our deep dive into the show and that includes including the community. So without any further ado, let's dip into the mailbag, and then we play the mailbag song. The mail's here.
Here's the mail that never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want a whale mail.
Oh my gosh. All right. So this is going all the way back to Endgame Part 1. And so Matthew Barbario writes, awesome penultimate review, ! The bittersweet beginning of the end of TFA. It's a great episode of the series and what I would consider the best two-parter starter of the series. So much happens that both stands alone and sets up the crazy series finale. And of course, you can't go wrong with Jetpack Optimus. I always think of Revenge of the Fallen, Dark of the Moon Optimus, seeing that, and I have to say, the thought of this team being assembled as basically Ultra Magnus doing the classic government dirty laundry disposal really adds something to the series. The crew that had just thrown together to hide Omega, get rid of anyone who knew the traitor, and a pity assignment for Optimus, yet they ended up being a very competent team, saved Detroit, and fought the Decepticons better than the Autobots did during the war. The depth of the story in this quote-unquote kids show will never not be astounding, even if some cases we're seeing things the writers never intended. See also our discussions with Marty. Not to insult current shows, but they just don't really do it like that anymore so much of the time. Now I feel the need to defend Jolt in Revenge of the Fallen. Michael Anders likes that one. Yeah, he was basically just there as a car advertisement like these movies really often were, but is that really any different than G1, and especially the 1986 movie where it was all one big toy commercial question mark? I mean, they even killed off characters to bring in new toys, ! Though I am thankful for that in a way, since it did give us some pretty cool characters like Hot Rod / Rodimus, but at least the live action movies never killed to sell a new car. That's not exactly. LO.
Well.
Oh, and I love the brief inclusion of Depeche Mode. Great band! ! There you go.
Right, yeah.
So thank you, Matthew Barbera. That's a lot to chew on there. That's one.
Yeah. Well, yeah. First of all, I mean, the Dark of the Moon, Jetpack, Optimus, absolutely there. And I think I watched Dark of the Moon again for my season of rewatching the Michael Bay movies. But seeing that design, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, the connective tissue there is spot. Someone must have been looking at, whoever designed that must have had like a bunch of pictures open of everything, and one of them had to have been animated Jetpack Optimus. I have to.
Well, absolutely. I agree with that as well. And you cannot deny the influence of Gojinrai from Super God Master Force, especially with the God Bomber outfit. And what I love about this is that it homages like three different things at the same time, while still also kind of being its own thing. Like, animated Jetwing Optimus is kind of his own thing. Wingblade Optimus is kind of, his own thing in and of itself. He's got like, the Magnus hammer, and, there's some design elements that are unique to that take. So I love that it takes all of these different influences and homages and combines it into like its own kind of one unique thing.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so uniquely animated that can do that. I mean, other things have tried to like pull that off, and it's felt kind of forced. But just, I don't know. Animated to me feels like this big wad of chewing gum where it just takes in all these little pieces of everything and just turns it into the source material, and it just like flawlessly, seamlessly.
If we did T-shirts and designs, we should have one that says, "Oh, that's so animated." Maybe in the font of "That's so Raven," but like it would be like that's so Transformers animated or something like that. We'll keep workshopping that one.
Totally.
Because it's very much like uniquely its own thing. Very, very cool.
Yeah. Another point I want to bring up just quickly, that was a great point about, bringing in new cars, and maybe we kind of have a back and forth about was the Michael Bay movies to sell cars or anything. But I do think I've stated something like this before, but he knew how to pay for these movies. He knew it was going to be this hugely expensive blockbuster. How do we bring in the army to want to be part of it? How do we bring in car companies to want to fund it? And I think back to those movies. That's one of the things I loved about it, whether you love them or hate them, that excitement that everyone wanted to be a part of it. Like, you wanted these car companies. They wanted like the cardboard Bumblebee stand up in their showroom. They wanted their car to be in the movie. I think I was just watching one of the Aaron Archer commentaries, and he was talking about how, there's like that one car that's left, and I think it's like a Chevy Aveo. and there was like tons of the toy of it left over because the car company was like, this is going to be our next big thing. You got to go all in, make us a Chevy Aveo. Waste Management was really excited about, like their dump truck being used in Dark of the Moon. Like there was just this excitement. Everyone wanted to be a part of it. And I don't know. I feel like that came from Michael Bay.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, and we talked about this pretty extensively in the What I've June episode of Mike Seibert Radio, where we talked about pretty extensively about the Michael Bay stuff, and that was such a fun conversation. I revisited that very recently, and really fun stuff, kind of brainstorming, what kind of a new Michael Bay movie could be like. And I've heard from some of our friends that they really kind of liked our take more so than other Transformers content creators, because most folks are just like, just do more G1. Do more G1. I mean, even me, a dude who's a G1 from day one, is like, well, no, if you're going to bring Michael Bay back, then you do the Michael Bay stuff. And I even stuck my neck out and said, I blame you and Matthew Barbera and all your pro live action lobby over there. But
we're pro live.
But there is a magic that's been missing from latter installments that is, there's an intangible way of thinking about the Bayhem and the Bayhem-essence, I suppose. I'll leave it.
Yeah. Well, in 2027, it'll be a 20-year-old franchise that's considered vintage, I think, as far as it goes. So there will be legitimate nostalgia for it, legitimate vintage, that we have to bring back in. So there's something there. They should to your point, they should do it like Michael Bay
I agree.
did.
If they're going to do it, exactly. And it looks even closer to becoming a reality, because like when we talked about it, it was still kind of rumors, but not rumors. Like, it was a lot of insider stuff. Now I think it's more actually official. So that's a development since the last time we recorded that episode. But but anyway, back to comments on Endgame Part 1. The Autobot of Power commented, there you still got I'm going to read this as written. There you still got left plenty of animated shorts, though. I think that's in response to other media, and that's something we haven't even covered with Marty. And quite frankly, I don't know where to watch them, because like there's like a dozen or so shorts, and it's like Meet Optimus Prime, Meet Megatron. It's kind of, from what I could piece together, similar to like the G1 season 3 type of things. It's like, oh no, it's the files of Teletran 2. These are the evil quintessons, the creators of the Transformers. That kind of thing. And it was just basically like clips to pad out short episodes. I don't think that that's quite the same as the shorts, so I don't know if they ran on Cartoon Network. I can tell you that they are not, I repeat, not on my Shout Factory Complete Series DVD.
Oh no!
I have an axe to grind with Shout Factory, by the way, so I picked that up. I don't know. After we dropped our Endgame 2-parter, found it at Walmart, off the shelf, bought it, and it's fine. The presentation is very clean. It's, I like having it as a piece of physical media, but it's missing half of the audio commentaries. There's a commentary for Mission Accomplished that's not on that DVD. There's another episode that's missing as well. I don't remember off the top of my head, but basically, like, it has commentaries for Garbage In, Garbage Out, and for Transwarp parts 1, 2, and 3. But I think that's it. There's no season 1 commentaries, and there's like one episode commentary for season 2. And I know. So like I need to buy a separate season 2 DVD to get the other commentary tracks, which just really burns me up. And again, no short.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if that's the nature of like kind of mashing everything in. They got to cut some stuff out just to fit it on the disc, because I was going to say, where I have seen and own those shorts is they are special features on the Transform and Rollout part 1 through 3 box set. As I've mentioned in the past, they release those as a separate 2-disc set, and then you get season 1 collected edition after that. So in my world, I don't have those first 3 episodes on. They're not on the season 1 complete collection. It's treated like its own movie. But since there was more room there, you only had 3 episodes on 2 discs. They put all those shorts on as special features.
Fascinating. So more physical media for me to go buy. But I would also say, though, and I don't mean for this to be a whole damn tangent, but like even with you having the shorts on the Transform and Roll Out, that's not all of them. Like,
yeah, that's probably true.
And also because of the time, but also because like 2 of them became lost media for a while. And I think, and I want to get into maybe this is more a question for Kian if we ever have him on the show, but basically Kian Carlisle found them. And ran it by Marty and said, hey man, I have these shorts. What do we want to do with them? And legend has it, Marty was kind of resistant about releasing them out in the wild and eventually relented and gave the blessing to Kian Carlisle to put them out. So I think the only place they exist is on Kian Carlisle's Transformers channel. But
why does that not surprise me?
Right, exactly. So, but
this guy,
we could sort that out on a different day. But like, but basically, like the long and short of it is there is no one single complete tome of all of Transformers Animated with all of the commentaries, all of the shorts, all of the special features. I was really kind of hoping that the complete series box set would give me some of that, and it gives me almost none of that, and it kind of burns my ass. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
I am jealous though of that box set. I do think that's cool that there is something that's all in one. Like I love having it in 3, like to complete my collection, but like having it in one set, that's really special. It's 6 discs. It's in a nice slim package with like the collapsed, it's like 2 discs on each tray type of thing. Very slim profile, fits very nicely on the shelf. But I think because of that, there's a compromise in the stuff that it actually has on it, which again, I'm kind of disappointed because Shout Factory is really good, usually at like boutique collections like that. So, but anyway, our good buddy John Phipps writes, the curator of the Transformers D&D game. If you want to be a part of that, send us an email. We'll pass your info on to John, and you could do some D&D. But anyway, our dirt boss, if you will, right? That was the episode he was on with us. Yeah.
Three's a crowd. So John writes, I think the darkest part of RC is the implication that she was chosen as a teacher for the Omega program because they were making the Omegas childlike so that they couldn't understand what they were being used for. And Matthew responded to that and said, I never thought of it that way, but it makes perfect sense. Omega Supreme in every appearance was very childlike. That makes his story even sadder. Deep hurting.
Deep hurting. Deep hurting.
Yeah. We kind of just were coming off this interview with Marty where we obviously got we were more into like the corrupt, nefarious nature of the Autobots and the Elite Guard, and that was very fun for our show. And thank you to Marty for letting us have that as we talked about it live, knowing we were full well wrong. But even when he was like, I didn't see it as it was more an act of desperation. He didn't necessarily think the Autobot Elite Guard was evil. But I think just in great writing that just comes out, like it's like setting up those little hints and tones to sort of put those little breadcrumbs out that they might be bad. I mean, I just think as a writer, you're always, even though you're writing a kids show about good versus evil, you're always thinking in the gray a little bit as a great writer. And I think those things just kind of came out, and we see it. Our audience is like on board with that nature. I mean, we saw it in real time happen. Like my soul-sucking Sentinel Prime's not that great. Ultra Magnus isn't that great. The Elite Guard's not that great. Like, we saw that happen in real time. And I love it, I think it's a really strong writing point. And I think that storyline has evolved over time from what it was in 2007 through 2009 to something all kind of grasp today and be like, yeah, we're still fighting evil. This is something we need.
Absolutely. Well, and I would also add to that in talking to Marty, it gives us the opportunity to dial it back a little bit also. It's like, well, yeah, that's an interpretation, but it was never intended to be that dark, that sinister. So it's all it's also good perspective for us looking at it 15 years later.
Yeah, reins us in a little bit. We can get a little carried away.
It's very similar to like the fluid legislation. It's like and that's the classic writer trope of like, well, the reality is that it needs to be what it needs to be for the story to happen. So and so it's kind of refreshing to get some of these bits of wisdom from the man himself, and again, as we've already said, it kind of puts things, it kind of brings us back down to earth a little bit because
it was our job to go down these rabbit holes. Yeah, right. I mean, this is what we were here to do. Now the boss comes in and he's like, all right, easy guys.
It's enough. It's like, this has gone on long enough. This
pack your things, give me your badge.
I'm gonna need your badge and your gun. What? I'm like, I'm a podcaster. It's like badge and gun now. You're on this case.
Fine.
Take a couple days. You're suspended.
With pay.
I always wondered about the mechanics of that. It's like, at what point does human resources get involved? It's like, well, Sarge told me I had to go home, but like, is it like, do I clock vacation time? Do I clock sick time? How do I notate this on my time card?
Yeah, I mean, I want to storm out of here, but I need to punch out manually. Is that
damn Kronos machine isn't working? Damn card doesn't swipe. God damn it! I've tried to storm out of here. It can't swipe my card. You know what time I left.
See, this is what we do. We're doing it right now. We're going too far.
Oh, I love it. Do I get to continue to accrue vacation while I'm on suspension? Oh my god. Okay.
That just doesn't make good. That's just not a good movie scene, right? But we have all these questions.
Well, then I wonder though if the manager of human resources then calls the sergeant and say like, well, you can't just send them home like that. You have to open it. Where's your documentation? It's like, first you have to open a ticket. It's like, then you have to have documentation, and then you have escalation. Was there any opportunity for counseling before this incident? Holy crap, this is getting way too real.
Oh, man. This is a movie.
Wow. Oh my gosh. All right. So back to the mailbag. So we moved to Endgame Part 2 and got a couple comments here as well. Vadertron, who was part of the Legion of Substitute Autobots for our panel show post Endgame, writes, which we had recorded before we dropped Endgame. So it's nice that those folks have the opportunity to experience the Endgame after hanging out with us. But anyway, so Vadertron writes, so about the quote unquote all spark powered beings, I think it is safe to say that at least the Dinobot survived because they were given life by Sari's key, not the Allspark itself. The fates of the others, though, ... uncertain. Shuddering face. Which I think we've pretty much asked and answered that. It's like, I think, because like really this all kind of comes from the fate of Starscream. And I posited, well, if Starscream had that fate, why didn't anybody else? That kind of thing. And the reality is one, it's whatever serves the story. And it served the story for things to end for Starscream that way. In a way that it didn't for the other myriad of all-spark powered creatures. So I think we did a pretty good job of litigating that. But on the Starscream tip, John writes again, I'd assume that Starscream died because he was so injured and had no spark, and his spark chamber was empty. I think the rest are uninjured and also have active sparks and therefore survive.
That's a great point, actually. Like Starscream was brutalized even before Megatron started beating him up on repeat. Right. There's nothing left of that guy. You take that fragment out, he's
right. Whereas the Constructicons, whereas Retgar, once the Dinobots, once they are infused with Cybertronian life, no matter how that happened to be, they are now living Cybertronian beings, presumably with sparks and spark chambers. Now, granted, I still think that the Constructicons were exploded when the transwarp exploded on Dinobot Island. But that's neither here or there because we don't know, because that would be in season 4 or whatever. But the thing to underscore again with Starscream is, let's not forget what happened in Mission Accomplished, where like Lugna opens up his chest cockpit and there's literally cobwebs in there. Like his spark chamber is empty and there's cobwebs in there. His spark chamber is empty, Lord Megatron.
His life force has been extinguished.
So I think that kind of speaks to Starscream's demise versus the other characters. We continue this last one here from Matthew Barbario again. It's the end of the podcast as we know it.
And we feel fine.
Well, we certainly feel fine now. This was a great and long discussion of one of the greatest episodes of Transformers Animated. It really was such a great finale with the most "that's it" ending ever. Super abrupt. So much happened, so much is left unsaid, and Prowl proves that what Michael said when you started is true. He exemplified no sacrifice, no victory in his sacrifice that brought victory. I think that's incredibly profound. I took some notes on things throughout and I wanted to touch on. When Megatron sees Optimus and remarks about Ultra Magnus, I assume he said that because of the hammer and not because Ultra Magnus could fly. But I do wonder how much Megatron and Ultra Magnus fought during the war.
Yes.
The release of episodes of the podcast coinciding with TFA release dates has to be the work of the Allspark! I love it. I love the inclusion of the Cybertronic Spree version of Instruments of Destruction. It's a killer cover! ! I'm glad you caught that because I did that for you, Matthew Barbario. You were going to get it. It's like you and me are the only people who would get that reference, and I'm glad you got it. And speaking of them, Frank Todaro, the Cybertronic Spree, speaking of them, Frank Todaro actually worked with them to voice Starscream in their 2025 MagFest Robot Prom. I did not know that. In fact, Frank Todaro, recent guest at Cybfest Northwest. So it all ties together. Great guy, really fun dude. Love that guy. I love the quote unquote "my name is Optimus Prime" line so much. David Kaye's delivery was so good, and that line is used really well in a cover of the TFA theme I've heard. That line, plus Megatron's before it, paired with the song, always gives me chills when I hear it. I gotta search that out. I'm not sure if I know what that is in reference to, but I will. If I could find it, I'll drop it in here. I don't think Retgar and the other Shard bots. Oh, I like that. Shard bots.
No, I love it.
Be careful with which letter you put there. Entirely. Right. And the leader of the Shard bots, Skidmark.
Shard bots.
See, we went a couple episodes without being dirty. Happens when Marty Isenberg leaves. He takes all the class with him.
Yes,
now
exactly.
We're talking about sharp butts. But anyway, so I don't think Rekgar and the other shard bots would have died, as I think the shards gave them sparks. And finally, I now really want to hear David Kaye's voice as Batman. Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I think that would be really cool! Exclamation point. That happened in real time. It's like I can't read it. That last line is definitely Batman-esque, as you said.
That would be the easy way out, Megatron. You don't deserve it.
But again, great podcast, great episode, and great way to end the episode by episode discussions, of which I will definitely miss! Exclamation point. Oh, and Mike Seibert! Exclamation point. Postscript. He puts a postscript in a YouTube comment. If you have ever watched the show Gotham, I recommend it. Marina Baccarin plays a great character there as well. Yeah, she's Dr. Leslie Tompkins. And yes, a huge reason why I enjoyed that show as well. I like Gotham as well, but yeah, I'm like, yeah, man. And if you are playing Mike Seibert, Two Mikes Too Furious Bingo, you should have a Marina Baccarin spot on there, because I'm going to be watching a CBS crime drama called Sheriff Country this fall, which stars Marina Baccarin as a country town sheriff, which I don't know anything about. Apparently it's a spinoff of Fire Country, which I don't watch. I do not care. I'm going to watch it for reasons, reasons.
Yeah. We know the reason.
Exactly. And that is it for the mailbag for now. Michael Andrews, before we leave, like, I feel like we've had two endings already. This is very much a Return of the King type of thing. Before we get out of here and before we part ways, we had the opportunity to catch up with some friends, didn't we?
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, if we're speaking of where we're getting dirty and our class went, we were just on with the boys of Autopod Decepticast talking Beast Wars over on their show. So that was a lot of fun. It's the Coming of the Fusors parts 1 and 2, season 2, episode 2 and 3, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, a lot of legislation, and depending upon the rarity of cuts that Ryan puts out, you might hear your boy Mike Seibert get a little testy with some of his friends. I think I didn't have enough coffee that morning or something like that, because I was getting bitchy. Especially towards the end of part 2, but Aaron has like some really great questions for the two of us about the conclusion of the episode discussion, and we talk about kind of where we're at now in Two Mics with kind of like the Isenberg files and talking with Marty and continuing our deep dive beyond the 42 episode discussion. And it's always great kicking it with those guys. It wasn't a full on takeover like they did with our show when they came on for Auto Boot Camp, but it was certainly close. Because I talk a lot. I am loquacious. Brevity, as you might say, is not my first best strength. That was a lot of fun. No, it was a great show, and kind of something I wanted to bring up on I didn't bring up with Marty when we most recently talked to him. Something I didn't bring up on APDC when we were talking with them is, Marty had said something to the effect of like he wasn't his hot take was like he wasn't super impressed with Peter Cullen's Optimus Prime. And he really likes David Kaye's Optimus Prime, obviously. And he told that story about how like he just kind of liked David Kaye's regular speaking voice. And that was kind of like Optimus when he heard it, when it hit his ears. That moment really struck me later as like that is sort of the same origin story, though. Like Peter Cullen's Optimus Prime is sort of that, like, he wanted to do it one way and he got that advice from his brother in that famous story to kind of do the more toned down version. I mean, that's really kind of what happened with David Kaye and the Optimus that we see in animated, right? Like it was him doing just, a version of his voice and making it better. That was kind of a lot of fun. And it was cool to see that the Megatron in that show was kind of shaping up a little bit. Whereas Marty had said something to the effect of like, he never liked Beast Wars Megatron because he just felt like he was being evil for evil's sake. And then we sort of, I think we all agreed, I think we can't, spoilers for that show, but we all came out of it being like, Megatron's finally getting good. Like he's finally shaping up. And I thought it was so funny because you and I both know he acted very much like the animated Megatron, even to that scene that's kind of right out of Rise of the Constructicons.
Yes. I mean, there's a very similar scene in there. It's and I wasn't prepared for that. I probably hadn't seen those episodes before. So because when I watched them, it all just it was very much a first time watcher type of thing. Got to see Transmetal Megatron on his rollerblades, which was a ton of fun. And,
not roller skates.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how much of that litigation makes it into the final cut, because I stuck my neck all the way out there and was wrong.
You lost $500 to each of us. If that, I don't know if that's going to make the cut, but that's what happened.
Absolutely. But yeah, no, I really appreciate that that connectivity between the David K. Optimus and the Peter Cullen Optimus, because strong enough to be gentle is, obviously the mantra of the Peter Cullen performance. And, we can litigate at other times whether it drifts from that in later iterations, but certainly for that first batch of G1 episodes, it is shockingly close to Peter Cullen's kind of natural speaking voice. It's changed a little bit, not all that dissimilar to how David K. is just Optimus, just kind of kicked up an octave. It's very, very similar. I really appreciate that you paired those together.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can quickly bounce back to Matthew Barbario's comments, that's another thing I didn't get to bring up with Marty, but I was trying to get it across is, when we were talking about the Arrival, there's that issue where Optimus faces off against that simulation of Megatron. And that's where I was going to bring up that point. Matthew brought it up. It does feel like there's a backstory there between Megatron and Ultra Magnus, or Ultra Magnus had faced off against him and he's like, this guy's the worst. I fought him. I couldn't beat him. Let's put him in all our training simulations. I found the worst of the Decepticons. I got the guy to star in our video game here. He's the baddest. And there's a funnier take where did Ultra Magnus lose to Megatron? And he's like, well, we have to tell everyone that he's the baddest bad guy of all time. Did he do more for Megatron's kind of legacy than actually Megatron himself?
Right. Love that. I love that. Well, and again, the whole perspective of the villain being the hero of their own story, and I've had two opportunities to stick my neck out with Marty on mic. Now that he's not with us, I feel a little more comfortable saying this out loud, but he refers to Megatron as a freedom fighter. That's how Megatron sees himself. And through the lens of the times, kind of our more darker, cynical viewpoint of Transformers Animated, the thing to keep in mind is that someone's freedom fighter is another person's terrorist, and vice versa. Someone's terrorist is someone else's freedom fighter. And I appreciate that Marty put that nuance in there, that we didn't just interpret it, it's there. Because we picked up on that. I think I've used that phrasing in previous episodes now that I think about it, but still it's that was listening back to our first conversation with Marty. That's what really stuck with me. It's that and what if Atom Bomb had a conscience, and even his jumping off point for Omega. It's the creators of the Iron Giant had said what if a gun had a soul? It's that just tore my damn guts out when I was listening to that in editing, so much so to where I texted you, Michael Anders. I'm like, oh my God, I got to the part where he said what if a gun had a soul? And it's just
Yeah, and all that stuff in that show, they make several references to weapons of mass destruction. That language obviously came out of the Bush era, the George W. era, I should say. That's where I think it's an escalation. Where back when Iron Giant was written, the gun with a soul was really prominent. In that era, it was well, what if the atom bomb? What if these weapons of mass destruction had a conscience? That's the next evolution of the gun, really, for our time. And that's kind of what we were all going through then. And then the world got better, and nothing ever bad happened ever again. So We're not certainly not living through any of that now.
Well, and that's a great place to leave things for now. Like, share, rate, and review the show. Like and subscribe, comments on YouTube and Spotify or whatever, and
leave 5 stars if we've uplifted your spirit and made you feel better about your life.
There it is. All right. Well, let's. Well, friend, I think we did it. Let's get the hell out of here and eat some pizza and yeah, it's gonna be good stuff, and maybe we'll make some good choices while we're at it. Yeah. All right, we did it.